Chapter 206. The unforeseen event in Huainan Mansion. Zhao Yong was dressed in black. From a distance, Jiang Peihuan hadn't noticed, but as he approached, she detected the strong scent of blood on him. Moreover, Zhao Yong's face was extremely pale. After some thought, Jiang Peihuan tossed him a bottle of medicine. Seeing that Jiang Peihuan had given him another bottle of medicine, Zhao Yong looked somewhat puzzled. Before he could question, Jiang Peihuan quickly said, "It's to stop the bleeding." Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, a look of surprise flashed in Zhao Yong's eyes, followed by a complex emotion. However, he didn't say anything and simply bowed to Jiang Peihuan before leaving with Zhao Fuqing. "Eldest sister, are we going back to the mansion? We rarely come here, so let's stay for a few days." As she spoke, Jiang Peihuan turned to look at Xiao Nanya beside her. Seeing her gaze, the man directly responded, "Whatever Huana wishes." Thus, after Zhao Fuqing's departure, Jiang Peihuan and the others stayed in West Mountain. Inside the capital city, Huainan King's mansion. Qing. What happened? Chu Ru almost fainted when she saw Zhang Fuqing covered in blood. She turned and stared fiercely at Zhao Yong. Zhao Yong stepped forward, bowing to Chu Ru before quietly saying, "Your Highness, the prince encountered a brown bear in West Mountain. His leg was bitten off." "What did you say?" Chu Ru had not noticed anything wrong with Zhao Fuqing, who was covered with a black blanket. But upon hearing Zhao Yong's words, she tremblingly pulled back the blanket. Seeing Zhao Fuqing's missing foot, her vision darkened, and she fainted. Queen Huainan, Nanny Wei saw Chu Ru fall and quickly went forward to support her. She then yelled at a maid nearby, "What are you waiting for? Go fetch the doctor." "Yes." The maid, startled by the scene, ran out upon hearing Nanny Wei's command. The entire Huainan mansion was in chaos. Zhao Yong looked at the servant and whispered, "Where's His Highness? Has he arrived? I've already sent someone to wait at the palace gates. As soon as His Highness comes out, he will be in form." Hearing this, Zhao Yong nodded. "Chief Butler Zhao Yong, the doctor is here. Quick, let him treat the prince." While the doctor examined Zhao Fuqing, Zhao Yong stayed close. After the examination, Zhao Yong asked softly, "How is Prince? His life is not in danger, but what?" The doctor glanced at Zhao Fuqing's leg and whispered, "From now on, the prince will have a handicap." Although the doctor was being tactful, but everyone in the room understood what the doctor meant. He meant that Zhang Fuqing would be a disabled. "Do you mean that my son will be a cripple from now on?" Just as Zhao Yong was about to speak, Chu Ru, the queen of Huainan, rushed in. She glared at the doctor with anger in her eyes and spoke coldly. Seeing the expression in Chu Ron's eyes, the doctor was shocked. However, he was just a doctor, not a god. He could only tell the truth. After bowing to Chu Ru, the doctor said in a trembling voice, "Forgive me, Your Highness, but the young prince's leg has been bitten off. Even the mightiest god cannot." "Shut up. Do you believe that one will kill you, you quack?" Before the doctor could finish, Chu Ru shouted at him. Then, she turned to the guards and ordered, "Kill this useless doctor." Hearing Chu Ron's words, the doctor's face turned pale. Zhao Yong, having witnessed the scene, stepped forward, "Your Highness, this isn't the doctor's fault. Please spare him, slap." Before Zhao Yong could finish, Chu Ru slapped him hard on the face. Glaring at him, Chu Ron's eyes were dark as she said, "If it's not his fault, then it's yours. A servant like you failed to protect your master. You deserve to die too." As she spoke, Chu Ru looked at the guard at the side and said coldly, "Kill this damned person as well." However, none of the guards from the Huainan mansion dared to step forward. Zhao Yong had always been a favorite of the King Huainan. Although Chu Ru was the queen of the Huainan mansion, the guards were loyal to the king. So, no one took action. Seeing this, Chu Ru, already in a foul mood, looked even more displeased. She shouted at the guards, "You dog slaves, do you not understand human language? What are you yelling about?" A deep voice echoed from the entrance. Everyone knelt down and greeted, "Your Highness." Zhao Yong entered the hall. Looking at the hysterical Chu Ru, he said coldly, "Look at yourself. Do you look like a queen? Qing is missing a leg and could be dead, How can one care about anything now? He brought this on himself. Who else is there to blame? Chu Ru was stunned when she heard Zhao Yang's words. She stared at Zhao Yang in disbelief. If she wasn't certain that her hearing was perfect, she'd have doubted her ears. She gazed at Zhao Yang in shock, whispering, "Your Highness, what do you mean by that? Qing is your own son. He dared to scheme against the Jiang family on West Mountain and was bested. Who is there to blame? And since you mentioned that Qing is my son, there's something else one should tell you." Hearing this, Chu Ru suddenly had a bad feeling. She looked up at Zhao Yang, eyes wide in anticipation. However, Zhao Yang did not look at her. Instead, he looked at Zhao Yong. "Yong is also my biological son." "What did you say?" Zhao Yang's voice was soft, but Chu Ru heard him clearly. She looked between Zhao Yang and Zhao Yong. It was then that she noticed the uncanny resemblance between them. Chu Ron's face turned ashen. She pointed at Zhao Yang, her fingers trembling. "You heartless man. Have you forgotten what you promised my father and mother? You said you'd take care of me. You said you'd never take another concubine. Now, you say this bastard is your son. Zhao Yang, have you been fair to me, to my parents?" Faced with Chu Ron's repeated accusations, Zhao Yang's expression remained unchanged. If one looked closely, there was a hint of disgust and anger. Looking at Chu Ru, Zhao Yang said coldly, "It's because I promised your father that all these years one haven't been with another woman. But Yong is the child of Lian Er." Hearing this name, Chu Ru collapsed into a chair nearby. Chapter 207. The new Prince of Huainan. She stared at Zhao Yang with her eyes wide open. She couldn't believe her eyes. This is impossible. Wasn't the child in her belly already aborted? As if she remembered something, she looked at Zhao Yang with a mocking gaze, laughing and crying, "It was you switched the bowl of medicine." Zhao Yang remained silent, looking at Chu Ru with dark eyes. Chu Ru was also born in the royal family. Initially, it was the Huanan king's mansion that actively sought to marry her. At that time, the Huanan king's mansion was on the verge of decline. In order to secure their status, Zhao Yang agreed to a series of unequal demands from the Chu family. One of them was that, other than Chu Ru, he should not take in any concubines. The second was to send away Lian the servant girl who had served him since he was young. At that time, Lian was already pregnant, but in order to marry Chu Ru, Zhao Yang still agreed to send Lian away and abort the child in her stomach. Upon understanding all of this, Chu Ron's eyes were filled with hatred. Looking at Zhao Yang, she scoffed, "If this bastard is still alive, that wretched woman must still be alive too. Chu Ru, today I might as well tell you directly that not only will I reveal Yong identity, but I will also bring Lian into the mansion. From today onwards, Yong will be the heir of the Huainan mansion. In your dreams." Hearing Zhao Yang's words, Chu Ron's eyes were fierce, and she yelled loudly. Looking at Zhao Yang, Chu Ru said with hatred, "Even though my father and mother are dead, the Chu family still exists. You won't deceive me. Brother-in-law has already agreed." "Queen," this time, Chu Ru really fainted. Nanny Wei held on to Chu Ru, her eyes filled with fear. However, Zhao Yang didn't even look at Chu Ru. Instead, he looked at Zhao Yong. "Yong from now on you will be the heir of Huainan Mansion. Do not disappoint me." "Thank you, father." Jiang Peihuan was in West Mountain, unaware of what was happening in the capital. After staying in West Mountain for 3 days, Jiang Peihuan returned with Xiao Nanye. Just as she entered the general's mansion, she heard that the heir of Huainan Mansion had arrived. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan's eyes were dark, and even Jiang Ruyun's eyes showed a touch of gloom. But seeing the person who walked in, both Jiang Peihuan and Jiang Ruyun were surprised. "Greetings to King Cheng." Zhao Yong walked forward and bowed to Xiao Nanye. "So you're the new heir to Huainan Mansion?" Looking at Zhao Yong, who was bowing to him, Xiao Nanye said with a faint smile. Hearing this, Zhao Yong was silent for a moment, then nodded, "Yes." Jiang Peihuan felt that her mind was in a mess. Zhao Yong's matter had never happened in her previous life. She looked at Zhao Yong. At this moment, He was no longer the steward of Huainan Mansion, but was dressed in a brocade dress. When Jiang Peihuan looked at Zhao Yong also looked back at her. He walked forward and bowed solemnly. "Thank you, eldest miss, for your help in West Mountain a few days ago. There's no need for such formality, Prince. It was a small matter for me, so please don't dwell on it." Jiang Peihuan did not like the people of the Huainan Mansion. Although she didn't hate Zhao Yong, it was just neutrality. "If there's nothing else, you may leave. I still have something to discuss with Miss Jiang." Seeing that Zhao Yong was standing there with no intention of leaving, Xiao Nanya spoke directly. Hearing this, Zhao Yong's face stiffened a little, but when he thought of his purpose for coming here, he still walked up to Jiang Peihuan. Seeing his movement, Xiao Nanya's expression turned cold, and he stood in front of Jiang Peihuan. "What do you want?" Seeing Xiao Nanya's action, Zhao Yong quickly responded, "King Cheng, please don't misunderstand. One just wanted to ask eldest miss for a favor." As he said this, Zhao Yong looked at Jiang Peihuan. "You've got the wrong person." Before Jiang Peihuan could speak, Xiao Nanya responded directly. Even when confronted with Xiao Men's cold face, Zhao Yong didn't step back. He persisted in looking at Jiang Peihuan, continuing, "Eldest miss, only you can help me with this. I beg you to save my mother." Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan's eyes were filled with surprise and confusion. Seeing her silence, Zhao Yong earnestly said, "Eldest miss, as long as you save my mother, if you ever have any requests in the future, I, Zhao Yong, will never refuse." A hint of conflict appeared in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. She didn't want to have anything to do with the people of Huainan Mansion, but when she was learning medicine, the divine doctor who taught her said that a doctor must have a compassionate heart. "Eldest miss, I beg you." As Jiang Peihuan hesitated, Zhao Yong directly knelt before her. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan frowned. "What are you doing?" Xiao Nanya, who was by her side, scoffed coldly. "Does the Prince Huainan intend to coerce Huan? I dare not. One just, forget it, I can see your mother. But one don't guarantee a cure. Eldest miss, don't worry, I won't trouble you further." Hearing the first part of Jiang Peihuan's statement, joy flashed in Zhao Yong's eyes. Even after hearing the latter part, he didn't show disappointment but sincerely promised. "Go and inform grandmother and mother." Looking at Lu beside her, Jiang Peihuan said in a soft voice. Once Lu left, Jiang Peihuan said to Zhao Yong, "Let's go." "There's no need, you can lead the way." When they reached the general's mansion's entrance, Zhao Yong signaled Jiang Peihuan to enter the carriage. However, Xiao Nanya, who was beside Jiang Peihuan, interrupted and lifted the curtain of his own carriage. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan didn't say anything and entered Xiao Nanya's carriage. As the carriage moved, Jiang Peihuan turned to the man beside her. "Do you think him too soft-hearted? Huan, you've always been the kindest person." If it had been anyone other than Xiao Nanya saying this, Jiang Peihuan would have assumed it was sarcasm. But the sincerity in Xiao Nanya's eyes was unmistakable. Seeing the expression in his eyes, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but laugh. "Perhaps only you would think that way." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Xiao Nanya softly said, "No matter when or where, in my heart, Huan, you're always the best. Do whatever you wish, I'll support you in everything." While Jiang Peihuan and Xiao Nanya were talking, the carriage stopped. When Jiang Peihuan stepped off the carriage, she noticed that Zhao Yong had taken them to a small house outside the city. Zhao Yong knocked on the door. Shortly after, a young maid opened it. Upon seeing Zhao Yong, she quickly bowed in respect. "Greetings, Your Highness, Prince Zhao." She then added, "Greetings to Your Highness King Chen and eldest Miss Jiang." Jiang Peihuan was mildly surprised that the young maid addressed her correctly but chose to remain silent. "Where's my mother?" Zhao Yong inquired. "Madam is still resting," the maid replied. Acknowledging this, Zhao Yong nodded and then gestured for Jiang Peihuan to enter, saying, "Eldest miss, after you." To treat her, you need to prepare 3 things. Which 3? I'll get them right away. Listen to me first. Each of these 3 items is extremely rare. The first item is the blood from the heart of the 9-tailed fox. Most of the nine-tailed fox lived in swamps and were extremely rare. Furthermore, the nine-tailed fox was very intelligent and cunning. Even if you saw it, it would be very difficult to catch it. When capturing the nine-spirit fox, you cannot kill it with an arrow. Once the nine-tailed fox died, the blood would be useless. Second is the gallbladder of a black snake. Black snakes are easier to find in deep mountains, but they are highly venomous, so capturing one requires great caution. She paused when she got to the last item, prompting Zhao Yong to ask, "What's the third item, eldest miss?" This third item is the rarest of the three. Meeting Zhao Yong's gaze, Jiang Peihuan whispered, "Half of your own liver." On hearing this, Zhao Yong's eyes widened. But after a brief silence, he said decisively, "Don't worry, Miss One will bring you all three items. When you get the nine-tailed fox's heartblood and the black snake's gallbladder, come find me. As for your liver, I must extract it myself." Understood. Prince Huainan, do you realize that with half of your liver missing, your body won't function as a normal person's would, and it might even reduce your lifespan? It doesn't matter. As long as one can save my mother, it's not just half of my liver. Even if you wanted my life, one wouldn't hesitate. Zhao Yong's expression was as indifferent as always, but at this moment, Jiang Peihuan's opinion of him changed slightly. If that's the case, then you should hurry and gather the ingredients. You have at most 1 month. Having said that, Jiang Peihuan walked straight towards Xiao Nanye. The man had already risen to his feet when he saw her approaching. Upon boarding the carriage, Han Feng couldn't help but mutter, "This new heir of Prince Huainan is much more decent than the previous one." Both Jiang Peihuan and Xiao Nanye remained silent as the carriage went straight to the general's mansion. It was almost dark by now. Jiang Peihuan, along with Xiao Nanye, went directly to the chrysanthemum hall. "Grandmother, old Madam Jiang." As Jiang Peihuan paid her respects to the old madam, Xiao Nanye also gave a polite bow. Seeing the two standing before her, old Madam Jiang's eyes were filled with smiles. "Your Highness, there's no need for formalities. Please sit." Once Xiao Nanye had seated himself, the old madam took Jiang Peihuan's hand, letting her sit by her side. "Did you have a good time on the West Mountain?" "Yes, very much." "That's good to hear." For a long time, Jiang Peihuan had always been calm and composed, losing some of the liveliness of a young girl. Therefore, the old madam always hoped that she would go out more often. Seeing the concern in her grandmother's eyes, Jiang Peihuan softly said, "Grandmother, on my trip to the West Mountain, I personally hunted some furs for you. Winter is approaching. I'll ask the seamstress to use these furs to make some cloaks for you." "That's wonderful, one will arrange for it to be done." "Huan when you went hunting in the West Mountain with King Cheng, why didn't you invite me?" "That's not very kind of you." Xue Qi walked into the main hall with a smile. After bowing to old Madam Jiang, he looked at Jiang Peihuan with dissatisfaction. Hearing him, Jiang Peihuan responded, "Cousin Qi, you spend all day with my elder brother in the military camp. How could I possibly find you? But why did you return home today?" Xue Qi, who had been staying in the general's mansion for a while, felt very much at ease. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's question, he replied with a smile, "I received a letter from my father yesterday. It said that my grandmother and my mother are coming to the capital." "My maternal grandmother and my aunts are coming?" "Yes. You'll be getting married in just over a month. However, this year's winter seems to be arriving earlier than usual. Your maternal grandmother was concerned about the snow hindering their travel and possibly missing your wedding, so they decided to come to the capital earlier." "That's good. Your maternal grandmother's concerns are valid. Once they arrive, we'll arrange for them to stay in the mansion." Upon hearing Xue Qi's voice, old Madam Jiang said with a smile. Chapter 209. The Xue family is coming. The old madam has good intentions. However, as a younger generation, one dare not agree to this matter on my own. We'll have to wait for my grandmother to come back and make a decision. Xue Qi bowed to old Madam Jiang and said with a smile. Over time, Madam Jiang had grown quite fond of Xue Qi. Now, hearing his words, the smile in her eyes deepened even more. Looking at Xue Qi, she replied with a smile, "In that case, 111 Talk to your grandmother in person. Yes. When old Madame Shui comes to the capital, send someone to Cheng Mansion. I'll join you to welcome her. At this moment, Xiao Nanye, sitting next to Jiang Peihuan, whispered something to her. Though Xiao Nanye spoke softly, everyone in the hall could hear him. Hearing the man's words, Jian Peihuan's eyes were a little surprised. She looked at the man and asked softly, "You're going too?" "Of course. The old madam, at her age, is coming all the way to the capital to attend our wedding. As a junior, it's only right for me to visit her." He seemed quite candid. Hearing his words, both Madame Jiang and Xue Qi looked pleased. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan nodded. "All right, I'll have Yi Xiao notify you." "Old madam, dinner is ready." Nanny Shu walked up to the old madam and said softly. Upon hearing her voice, old Madame Jiang looked to the group. "You can all have your meal here today. Then I'll have to trouble old madam." Although Xiao Nanya was always very gentle to old Madame Jiang, she did not neglect him. Most of the dishes on the table were Xiao Nanya's favorite dishes. Once seated, Xiao Nanyi said, "Thank you for the effort, old madam. Your Highness, you're treating me like an outsider. In just over a month, you'll be marrying Huan Er. From then on, we'll be family. There's no need for such politeness." "Yes." Knowing the close relationship between Jiang Peihuan and old Madame Jiang, Xiao Nanya always showed great respect to old Madame Jiang. Given her age, the old madam could easily become tired. After dinner, Jiang Peihuan left with Xiao Nanya. Xue Qi, on the other hand, went to Jiang Changbai's courtyard. "It's getting late. Aren't you going back to your mansion?" After leaving the chrysanthemum hall, Xiao Nanya followed Jiang Peihuan. She glanced at him and said softly. Hearing her, he replied softly, "I'll escort you to Plum Garden and then return to my mansion." "Okay." Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan nodded and said nothing more. The two of them walked towards the Plum Garden together. Yi Xiao and Han Feng trailed a few steps behind. On their way, neither spoke a word. Yet, whether it was Xiao Nanya or Jiang Peihuan, their expressions were gentle, without any sign of discomfort. Once they reached Plum Garden entrance, Jiang Peihuan paused and turned to Xiao Nanya. "It's late, and you must be tired from the past few days. Rest well." "All right." Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, the man responded softly. Jiang Peihuan glanced at the man and turned to walk towards the courtyard. At that moment, her wrist was suddenly grasped by the man. Subconsciously turning her head to look at him, before she could react, she felt a chill on her wrist. Lowering her head, Jiang Peihuan subconsciously looked at her wrist. On it was a black wooden bracelet, but that wasn't the main point. The key was that the bracelet had a tooth on it. Jiang Peihuan observed it for a long time before recognizing the tooth as resembling that of a wolf. Lifting her gaze to the man beside her, Jiang Peihuan softly said, "Is this the tooth of the West Mountain alpha wolf?" "Yes." Gently rotating the wooden bracelet on Jiang Peihuan's wrist, Xiao Nanya responded in a low voice. Jiang Peihuan's skin was flawless and fair, making the black wooden bracelet on her wrist stand out even more, highlighting her fairness. Looking down at Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nanya softly said, "Wolf teeth ward off evil. Though this would isn't as valuable as gold or jade, it represents my feelings. I hope you like it. Eldest miss, let me tell you, this bracelet was handcrafted by the master himself. Among all the bracelets, only this one satisfied him." Why do you talk so much?" Han Feng, who was standing by and saw that Jiang Peihuan remained silent, worried that she didn't like the bracelet and felt it was a waste of their master's effort. He rushed forward to speak but was cut off by Xiao Nanya's icy glare. Meeting Xiao Nanya's gaze, Han Feng silently closed his mouth. Yet, Jiang Peihuan's eyes revealed a hint of a smile. Looking at Han Feng, she chuckled and said, "Don't worry, one understand his intentions." Hearing this, Han Feng grinned. Then Jiang Peihuan turned to the man beside her and earnestly said, "One really like this bracelet." As she spoke, her eyes were full of joy. Seeing her smile, the man couldn't help but smile back, softly saying, "As long as you like it. I'll go in now. Emitem." Seeing the man nod, Jiang Peihuan lifted her skirt to walk into the courtyard, but the man grasped her wrist once again. Seeing his hand on her wrist, Jiang Peihuan chuckled. Do you have something else for me? Somehow, Jiang Peihuan's way of addressing Xiao Nanya had become very casual, and she no longer used formal titles. Jiang Peihuan's words were playful, but upon hearing them, Xiao Nanya nodded earnestly. Under Jiang Peihuan's gaze, Xiao Nanya handed her a ring. Besides the previous ruby ring, this was the second ring Xiao Nanya gave her. The ring had a pearl face, a soft pink pearl set on it, looking very gentle. But when Xiao Nanya pressed the pearl with his fingertip, a fine needle sprang out. Though the needle was tiny, from Jiang Peihuan's perspective, she could see its cold shimmer. With the needle retracted, Xiao Nanya said, "One noticed you no longer wear the previous ring, so I had this one made for you." As he spoke, he handed the ring to Jiang Peihuan. Without saying anything, she took the ring and wore it in front of Xiao Nanya. The pink pearl made her fingertip look even more luminous. Looking at the ring on her finger and the bracelet on her wrist, Jiang Peihuan smiled at the man beside her. "Do you have anything else for me?" "There's nothing else." Seeing the man shake his head, the smile in Jiang Peihuan's eyes became even warmer. Chapter 210, Gift Rest Early. I'll head back to the mansion first. Having said that, Xiao Nanya prepared to leave. However, Jiang Peihuan's voice echoed behind him. "You prepared a gift for me. In return, I have also prepared a gift for you." "What gift?" "Wait a moment." With that, Jiang Peihuan walked into the courtyard. Moments later, Xiao Nanya saw her return with a cloak in her hands. The entire cloak was crafted from snow-white fur. Jiang Peihuan had made it using rabbit fur she had collected in the West Mountains. Initially, Jiang Peihuan wanted to find high-quality pelts to craft a cloak for Xiao Nanya. But after injuring her hand, she couldn't hunt any longer. So, she used the fur from the rabbits she personally hunted to sew the cloak. "Winter might come early this year. I had planned to give it to you when it gets colder, but I'll give it to you now." Hearing this, Xiao Nanya didn't respond verbally. Instead, he reached out, took the cloak from her hands, and put it on. To the astonishment of those present, Xiao Nanya wore the snow-white cloak. While white could appear bulky, Xiao Nanya's tall and slender physique made him look even more noble with it. Turning to Jiang Peihuan with a smile, Xiao Nanya asked, "How is it?" Jiang Peihuan carefully looked at the man's cloak. Seeing that the size and length were very suitable, she nodded. "It fits perfectly. Master, if we don't leave soon, the sky will turn dark." Just as Xiao Nanya was reveling in the moment, a voice broke the mood. Glancing coldly at Han Feng, Xiao Nanya spoke softly to Jiang Peihuan, "I really like this cloak. I'll head back to the mansion now. Rest early." "Yes." This time, Jiang Peihuan truly went back to her room. Xiao Nanya watched her figure disappear into the doorway. Xiao Nanya turned around and left. Seeing this, Han Feng quickly followed. Perhaps it was because he was used to climbing over the wall. Even though Xiao Nanya entered through the main door, he didn't seem inclined to exit the same way. Instead, he climbed over the back wall. The guards of the mansion were already accustomed to Xiao Nanya's antics. Seeing him and his servant climb the wall, they acted as if they saw nothing. Xiao Nanya sat on Zui Yun's back while Han Feng followed beside him. Noticing the white cloak on Xiao Nanya in contrast to his own thin clothing, Han Feng felt a pang of envy. "Keep staring, and 111 gouge out your eyes. Master, do you think one should find a wife too?" Hearing this, Xiao Nanya turned to look at his secret guard. After a long stare, Xiao Nanya responded coldly, "Who would want you?" After saying that, Xiao Nanya patted the back of Zui Yun's and left Han Feng behind. Watching Xiao Nanya's retreating figure, Han Feng sighed silently. Back at the general's mansion, in the plum garden. "Eldest miss, it seems a bit windy tonight. Should I get a thicker blanket for you?" Years ago, on the battlefield, Jiang Peihuan had contracted a lingering ailment, making her sensitive to cold. Even in summer, she needed a blanket. Having set up Jiang Peihuan's bed, Yu turned to see Jiang Peihuan, who was seated by the table, and asked. Gently stroking the wolf tooth bracelet on her wrist, Jiang Peihuan nodded in agreement. Please do. Understood. After hearing Jiang Peihuan's response, Yue retrieved a thicker blanket from a nearby chest. However, just as she finished laying it out, a white figure darted onto the bed. How dare you get on the eldest Miss bed? Come down quickly. Just as Yue had the bed arranged, the little wolf cubs burrowed into the blanket. Seeing this, Yue could not help but frown. Eldest Miss, have you seen Xiao Bai? At this time, Lu walked into Jiang Peihuan's room in a hurry. With a calm demeanor, Jiang Peihuan responded, Xiao Bai is the name you gave to the little wolf cub? Yeah, it has white fur all over its body. The name Xiao Bai fits it perfectly. It's on the eldest Miss bed. Quick, get it down. When Yue knew that Xiao Bai was a wolf, she did not dare to hug it. But now that she saw it on Jiang Peihuan's bed, she mustered courage, lifted the blanket, and prepared to pick it up. However, Yue reached out several times but failed to catch it. This left Yue panting with exhaustion. Annoyed, she glared at Xiao Bai and then turned to Lu. Watching this, both Jiang Peihuan and Lu couldn't help but smile. Let me try. Saying so, Lu stepped forward. Yet, this time, Xiao Bai wouldn't let her touch it either. Stop messing around, come down. Seeing Xiao Bai diving deeper into the bed, Lu's eyes showed a touch of urgency. Since she didn't feel it was appropriate to get on Jiang Peihuan's bed, she stood by the side, reaching out. Never mind, let it stay in my room tonight. Looking at the scene in front of her, Jiang Peihuan said with a smile. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Yue and Lu did not say anything. Soon, the two of them left Jiang Peihuan's room. Lifting the blanket, Jiang Peihuan lay down on the bed. As soon as she lay down, Xiao Bai burrowed into Jiang Peihuan's arms. It even licked Jiang Peihuan's face with its tongue. You little thing, you're a wolf, yet you act just like a puppy. Jiang Peihuan stroked Xiao Bai's head and hugged it closely. Usually an early riser, Jiang Peihuan was awakened today by the sounds of laughter outside. Opening her eyes, she saw Xiao Bai peacefully sleeping by her bedside. She smiled and tucked it into the blanket. Eldest Miss, you're awake. As Yue gently pushed the door open, she saw that Jiang Peihuan had already sat up. She greeted her with a cheerful voice. Looking at her, Jiang Peihuan whispered, What's happening outside? It's so noisy. Eldest Miss, it's snowing. The young maids are all playing in the snow outside. Snowing? Hearing Yue's words, surprise flashed in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. Seeing Yue nod, Jiang Peihuan immediately went to the window. Pushing it open, all she saw was a world blanketed in white. It's only November, and it's already snowing. The capital gets cold early. In previous years, it would snow by the end of November. This year, it's just half a month early. But by the time of your wedding to King Cheng, it might be the coldest. Eldest Miss, His Highness King Cheng is here. Before Yue could finish her sentence, Lu's voice came from outside. Hearing the voice, Jiang Peihuan subconsciously looked outside the door. There in the courtyard stood a man wrapped in a snow-white cloak, the very one Jiang Peihuan gave him the previous night. However, he now held a dark wooden box in his hands. Greetings to your highness. Yue looked at Xiao Nanye who was walking over and quickly bowed. Chapter 211, Leaving the Mansion for a Tour. Get up. Seeing Yue bowing to him, Xiao Nanye spoke softly. Seeing Xiao Nanye heading towards the room, Yue hurriedly said, Your Highness, the eldest miss just got out of bed. Perhaps you could wait in the main hall for a moment. It's fine, don't mind me. By the time he spoke, Xiao Nanye had already entered the room. At that moment, Jiang Peihuan had just risen from bed, her long black hair draped casually behind her. Dressed in blue, she looked up to see the man, and a smile filled his eyes. If my elder brother sees this, he would surely kick you out. Seeing the man comfortably sitting by the table, Jiang Peihuan said with a laugh. Hearing her words, a smile also crept into Xiao Nanye's eyes. After pouring himself a cup of hot tea, he whispered, The young general is at the camp right now, he surely doesn't know. Chang Bai is in the camp, but I am still in the mansion. As Xiao Nanyes' voice fell, Xue Qi walked into Jiang Peihuan's room. Cousin Qi, why are you here? Seeing Xue Qi naturally sitting at the table, Jiang Peihuan laughed. Xue Qi did not look at Jiang Peihuan but said to Yu, quickly help your young miss get dressed. I'll take you all out later. Eldest miss, let's go wash up first. After glancing at Xiao Nanye, Jiang Peihuan turned and went behind the screen. Only then did Xue Qi turn to look at Xiao Nanye, his smile vanishing instantly to be replaced by anger. King Cheng, even though you and Huan are soon to be married, technically you're not married yet. Isn't it inappropriate for you to come to her room this early? Then why did General Xue come here then? Me. Hearing Xiao Nanyes' words, Xue Qi pointed at himself, saying irritably, it's not the same. Huan and Wan are like siblings. But she and I are officially engaged. Xue Qi was speechless. Eldest miss, how about wearing this white cloak today? Just wear this one. When Yu opened the cabinet, Xiao Nanye looked at them and said. Hearing Xiao Nanyes' voice, Jiang Peihuan and Yu looked at him. Facing their expressions, Xiao Nanye directly opened the wooden box on the table. When the box was opened, a fiery red gaze entered everyone's eyes. Xiao Nanye reached in and took out the fiery red cloak. This is made of firefox fur. Having grown up in Qingju, Xue Qi was very familiar with animal fur. He recognized the source at a glance. This firefox is extremely rare. Where did you find an entire cloak? Xiao Nanye did not answer Xue Qi's question. Instead, he unfolded the cloak in his hand and draped it over Jiang Peihuan. Yu saw this and quickly went forward, but she was stopped by Xiao Nanye. It's all right. I'll do it. As he spoke, he carefully adjusted the hem of the cloak for Jiang Peihuan, then fastened it at her neck. Eldest miss, this cloak looks great. Yu, watching from the side, commented with a smile. Xiao Nanye took Jiang Peihuan's hand and led her to a mirror. Look, do you like it? Following his direction, Jiang Peihuan looked at the mirror. The person in the mirror had a smile on her face, the fiery red fur making her face blossom like a peach. Millimeter. Hearing the voice by her ear, Jiang Peihuan nodded lightly. Suddenly, Xue Qi drew his sword, pointing it at Jiang Peihuan's bed. What's this? Seeing his action in the mirror, Jiang Peihuan exclaimed, Cousin Qi, please stop. It turned out that a creature named Xiao Bai, sensing various scents, had run out from under the bed. Xue Qi had recognized it as a wolf and drew his sword immediately. Seeing Jiang Peihuan holding Xiao Bai in her arms, Xue Qi smirked, Huan, is this little wolf cub yours? As he spoke, Xue Qi sheathed his sword. But Xiao Bai showed his teeth at Xue Qi. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan gently tapped Xiao Bai's head. Don't be rude. Hearing her words, Xiao Bai turned his back to Xue Qi, showing off his rear end. Seeing this, Xue Qi raised an eyebrow. Handing Xiao Bai to Yu, Jiang Peihuan laughed and said to Xue Qi, I brought him from the West Mountain for fun. This capital city is indeed full of wonders. Huan, with the snow this heavy, the city river must be frozen. Today, I'll take you to the river to go ice skating. Sounds good. Seeing Xue Qi's enthusiasm, Jiang Peihuan agreed with a smile. After speaking, Jiang Peihuan turned to look at Xiao Nanye. Before she could speak, the man softly said, 111 go with you. Then let's inform grandmother at the Chrysanthemum Hall. After having breakfast in Jiang Peihuan's courtyard, the three headed to the Chrysanthemum Hall. The old madam's courtyard was busy heating the floor. When Jiang Peihuan entered the old madam's room, it was already warm and cozy. Seeing Jiang Peihuan, the old madam's eyes brightened. The fur you're wearing is quite rare. In addition to the one Huan is wearing, one have prepared several pieces of darker fur. Once the embroiderers finish them, I'll have them sent here for you, Xiao Nanye softly replied. Such high-quality fur is hard to come by. Your Highness, you should also keep some for yourself. Seeing the concern in the old madam's eyes, Xiao Nanye's expression became even gentler. He walked forward and said softly, Don't worry, there's plenty of these in the Chengwang mansion. Grandmother, one came to inform you that I, His Highness, and Cousin Chi are preparing to go to the moat to play. After the heavy snow last night, the city river must have frozen. It must also be quite lively. You should take Xue Qi to see. Has been here for so long and hasn't really explored the capital. Don't worry, old madam. When one come back, I'll definitely bring you some delicious food, Xue Qi said with a smile. Seeing his smile, the old madam nodded. All right, then 111 wait for you all to return. After thinking for a while, old Madame Jiang looked at Xiao Nanya and said softly, if your highness is free tonight, come to my place for dinner. With today's heavy snow, I've asked the kitchen to prepare a pot. Then I'll bother the old madam again tonight. All right. It's getting late, you guys should leave. Urged by the old madam, Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nanya, and Xue Qi headed to the city river. As soon as they reached the river, Jiang Peihuan heard lively laughter. Xue Qi, seeing the crowded ice, was very excited. He ran up and waved to Jiang Peihuan, Huan come quickly. Chapter 212, Going out to play. Upon hearing Xue Qi's voice, Jiang Peihuan lifted her skirt and took 2 steps forward. By this time, Xue Qi had already found a sleigh, a unique ice amusement in the Qi kingdom. It had a curved plate at the bottom with a chair mounted on it. When someone sat in the chair, another person in front could pull the sleigh. As Jiang Peihuan neared, Xue Qi patted the sleigh's seat, urging, Huan come and sit. I'll pull you. Observing her surroundings, Jiang Peihuan noted that despite it being the season's first snowfall, attracting many to the frozen city river's sights, only a few were on sleighs, mainly children. Upon hearing Xue Qi's invitation, she replied with slight incredulity, Cousin Qi, I'm not a child anymore. How can one sit on this sleigh? Why can't you? Before she could react, Xue Qi quickly grasped Jiang Peihuan's wrist, settling her onto the seat. Hold tight. Without hesitation, Xue Qi took the reins and started running, pulling the sleigh behind. Given his experience with ice sports in Qingju, his pace was strikingly swift. Seated on the sleigh, with the icy wind threading through her long hair and causing her red cloak to billow like flames, Jiang Peihuan instinctively clung to the handrails. From afar, Xiao Nanya watched, his eyes softening at the heartwarming spectacle. How is it? Isn't it fun? Xue Qi called out as he glanced back at Jiang Peihuan. While she remained silent in response, her face broke into a subtly contented smile. In her younger days, military camp duties had occupied her, leaving little time for leisure. Later, due to health concerns, she seldom ventured outdoors, especially during the biting cold of winter. After running several laps pulling Jiang Peihuan, Xue Qi was panting from exhaustion. Upon returning to Xiao Nanya, he set down the reins and remarked with a weary voice, there are too few people on the ice, making it uneven. Pulling you was exhausting. You might want to eat less, you're rather heavy. Even though she knew Xue Qi was joking, Jiang Peihuan still shot him a glare. Cousin Qi, are you implying I'm fat? Once grandmother arrives in the capital, I'll surely complain to her about this. Please don't, I'm just joking with you. Hearing that Jiang Peihuan was going to complain, Xue Qi hurriedly begged for mercy. Smiling, Jiang Peihuan looked out over the vast icy plain. Gliding on this ice is quite enjoyable. Do you wish to see what lies beyond? Xiao Nanya murmured, following her line of sight. Before she could reply, Xiao Nanya took the reins. Let me lead you. Xiao Nanya? A surprised Jiang Peihuan watched his sudden gesture. Without hesitation, he propelled them forward, causing the sleigh to glide swiftly. Xiao Nanya purposefully steered towards a less congested area. Observing their direction, Han Feng felt the urge to tail them, only to be halted by Xue Qi, who chided, Are you truly that naive? Why on earth would you follow them now? But one have to protect my master. You act as if you stand a chance against His Highness King Cheng, Xue Qi interjected before Han Feng could finish. Soon, Xiao Nanya and Jiang Peihuan vanished from sight. Beyond the flat terrain, they encountered a long slope on the ice. Xiao Nanya shifted, standing protectively behind Jiang Peihuan, as the sleigh began its rapid descent. Xiao Nanya, look over there. As they sped downward, Jiang Peihuan spotted ice sculptures in the distance on the ice surface. Whoever had carved them had created numerous patterns, and from afar, it looked like a beautiful painting. Following her gaze, Xiao Nanya also noticed the ice sculptures. However, he quickly averted his eyes, turning them instead to Jiang Peihuan in front of him. Seeing the smile on her face, there was nothing but warmth in his eyes. As the two continued forward, people on the shore instinctively watched those on the ice. Among them were Xiao Juanhao and Lin Mengyao. Because of the first snow, Lin Mengyao specifically invited Xiao Juanhao out. Originally, Lin Mengyao was in a good mood. However, after witnessing the scene on the ice, the smile in her eyes instantly dimmed. After sliding down the slope, the sleigh could no longer move forward. At this point, Xiao Nanya got off the sleigh and stood in front, pulling Jiang Peihuan along. From time to time, he would ask Jiang Peihuan about the direction she wanted to go, and then follow the direction Jiang Peihuan pointed at. Witnessing the scene, Lin Mengyao struggled to maintain her smile, her hands clenched tightly. Throughout the capital, she was constantly compared to Jiang Peihuan. Since Lin Mengyao lacked prowess in martial arts, she took up the study of medicine, aiming to outshine Jiang Peihuan in this field. However, when Jiang Peihuan recently cured her of a particular poison, Lin Mengyao was confronted with the realization that her much-vaunted medical skills paled in comparison to Jiang Peihuan's. While Jiang Peihuan enjoyed the genuine affection of King Cheng, Lin Mengyao's fate was to be wed to Prince Qing as a mere side consort. In the grand scheme of things, a side consort was essentially a concubine. From a distance, she observed the scene on the ice. Xiao Nanya, the esteemed brother of the emperor, personally pulled the sleigh, all to bring joy to Jiang Peihuan. In that moment, Lin Mengyao was not alone in her swirl of emotions. Xiao Juanhao, standing beside her, shared her sentiments. Captured by the brilliant smile on Jiang Peihuan's face, Xiao Juanhao mused on how enchanting she appeared when she beamed. Yet, perplexingly, her expression always seemed to darken whenever her eyes met his. "Your Highness, you're here too?" At this moment, a melodious voice suddenly echoed in Xiao Junhao's ears. Turning his head, he saw Jiang Yang, accompanied by her maid, walking towards them. Dressed in white, Jiang Yang looked ethereal in this winter setting. Already possessing stunning looks and having made an extra effort in her appearance for the outing, she was truly a sight to behold. Xiao Juanhao, being a normal man, couldn't help but smile a bit when he saw her, even though he didn't have feelings for her. After all, she was the main consort bestowed upon him by Emperor Qi Ming. "Miss Jiang." Jiang Yang approached, and upon seeing Lin Mengyao next to Xiao Juanhao, she remarked with a smile, "Miss Lin is here too." Chapter 213, Drenched Socks and Shoes. Miss Jiang. Seeing her, Lin Mengyao couldn't hold back her smile anymore. She walked forward and bowed to Jiang Yang. Jiang Yang returned the greeting, but she quietly stood beside Xiao Juanhao. Mengyao Lin bit her lip and walked to the side. "Your Highness, I find this ice skating quite interesting. Why don't we go and have a try?" Jiang Yang saw Xiao Nanya and Jiang Peihuan on the ice and, thinking of something, she laughed and turned to Xiao Juanhao. "If Miss Jiang wishes, I will accompany you." Jiang Yang, although she made the suggestion, was prepared for Xiao Juanhao to refuse. After all, she had heard about the relationship between Lin Mengyao and Xiao Juanhao. But to Jiang Yang's surprise, Xiao Juanhao agreed to her request. However, the ones who went down weren't just Jiang Yang and Xiao Juanhao, because Lin Mengyao also joined them. Jiang Peihuan, who was having fun, suddenly heard a familiar and annoying voice. "Imperial Uncle?" Turning her head, Jiang Peihuan saw Xiao Juanhao approaching. Although she deeply disliked this man, due to his royal status, Jiang Peihuan had no choice but to rise from her sleigh and bow to him. Xiao Nanya looked at the group of people who had suddenly appeared, and his expression instantly turned cold. He looked coldly at Xiao Juanhao and said, "Why has the Prince Qing come here? Today is the first snow, and the city river must be very lively. As this is Miss Jiang's first visit to the capital, I wanted to show her around." Hearing this, Jiang Yang's eyes showed a hint of surprise, followed by derision. If she hadn't seen Lin Mengyao standing next to Xiao Juanhao, she might have thought he had brought her out intentionally. However, this was her future husband. So, smiling, Jiang Yang turned to Jiang Peihuan. "Miss Jiang, we meet again." Next, Jiang Yang greeted Xiao Nanye. "King Cheng?" Regarding Jiang Yang's greeting, Xiao Nanye merely glanced at her without saying a word. "Huan do you still want to continue playing?" Turning to look at Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nanye's eyes were full of tenderness. Having played for a while and seeing Xiao Juanhao, even the best scenery could not uplift Jiang Peihuan's mood. Hearing Xiao Nanye's words, she softly said, "Cousin Qi is waiting for us over there. Let's go find them." "All right." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, the man nodded lightly. In front of these people, Jiang Peihuan naturally could not sit on the sleigh letting Xiao Juanhao pull her. Moreover, the path ahead was uphill, so Jiang Peihuan stepped off the sleigh. "Miss Jiang, you continue to play. I'll go first," Jiang Peihuan said in a soft voice as she walked to Jiang Yang's side. She then proceeded to follow Xiao Nanye. However, as she passed by Xiao Juanhao, Jiang Peihuan suddenly lost her footing. "Be careful." Xiao Juanhao, who was standing beside Jiang Peihuan, saw her fall into the ice water and subconsciously reached out his hand. Thanks to Xiao Junhao's quick reflexes, Jiang Peihuan was pulled to safety, though her shoes and socks were wet. That was fortunate. If not for Xiao Junhao's timely intervention, Jiang Peihuan might have fallen into the icy water. By this time, Xiao Nanye had come over. Reaching out to hold Jiang Peihuan's hand, the man sized her up carefully. "Huan are you hurt?" "I'm fine." Seeing Jiang Peihuan shake her head, Xiao Nanye squatted down, touched her wet shoes, and frowned. "Your shoes and socks are wet." The bottom of Jiang Peihuan's feet were piercingly cold, but hearing Xiao Nanye's words, she softly said, "No problem, I'll change into a new pair in the carriage later. First, take off the wet shoes and socks." As he spoke, Xiao Nanye had already helped Jiang Peihuan sit on the sleigh. Afterward, the man squatted down, turning his back to Xiao Juanhao and the others. Ignoring Jiang Peihuan's attempts to stop him, Xiao Nanye carefully took off her shoes and socks. There was a hint of embarrassment in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, but the scene that followed made her eyes reveal a bit of surprise. Xiao Nanye removed his cloak and covered Jiang Peihuan with it, placing her feet inside. What's more, he took her feet in his hands. Jiang Peihuan instinctively tried to withdraw, but he tightened his grip. In just a moment, Jiang Peihuan's cold feet warmed up. Only after both of Jiang Peihuan's feet were warm did he release them, meticulously covering her with his cloak before bending down to pick up her shoes and socks. Without even looking at Xiao Juanhao and the others, Xiao Nanye began pulling the sleigh's reins, moving forward. Though dressed in simple black attire, Jiang Peihuan's eyes brimmed with smiles as she looked at his retreating figure. Xiao Juanhao and the other two had different expressions on their faces as they watched them leave. At this moment, Jiang Yang remarked lightly, "How did the ice crack all of a sudden?" While speaking, her gaze landed directly on Lin Mengyao. Meeting Jiang Yang's gaze, Lin Mengyao responded with a smile, "After all, it's only the first day, it's normal for the ice to be unstable." However, Lin Mengyao's hand slipped into her cloak. Seeing her movement, Jiang Yang simply smiled and said nothing more. Xiao Juanhao only withdrew his hand when Jiang Peihuan and Xiao Nanye disappeared from his sight. "Don't move." Upon reaching the shore, Jiang Peihuan prepared to stand up. Just as she was about to, she heard Xiao Nanye's voice. Immediately, he reached out, lifting Jiang Peihuan into his arms horizontally. "Huan what happened? Are you hurt?" Xue Qi, who had been playing with Han Feng, rushed over after seeing this. He ran so quickly that he almost tripped. Seeing the worry in Xue Qi's eyes, Jiang Peihuan whispered, "I'm fine, I just accidentally got my shoes and socks wet. Do we have a spare pair of shoes and socks in the carriage?" By this time, Xiao Nanye, still holding Jiang Peihuan, had reached the carriage and directed his question to Yi Xiao. "Yes." Hearing Yi Xiao's response, Xiao Nanye, carrying Jiang Peihuan, entered the carriage. Yi Xiao had already taken out Jiang Peihuan's shoes and socks from a drawer in the carriage. As she was about to approach, Xiao Nanye took them from her and said, "You can go out first." Hearing Xiao Nanye's voice, Yi Xiao paused in surprise. Seeing that Jiang Peihuan didn't protest, she exited the carriage. Soon, only Xiao Nanye and Jiang Peihuan were left inside. Seeing him come over with the shoes and socks, Jiang Peihuan quickly extended her hand. "One can do it myself." Chapter 214. Warning. However, the man avoided her hand. Before Jiang Peihuan could react, Xiao Nanye had already grabbed her ankle. Sitting beside Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nanye gently held her ankle with one hand and pulled the sock onto her foot with the other. Upon grasping her ankle, he realized just how delicate Jiang Peihuan's foot was, barely fitting into his palm. Although Jiang Peihuan maintained a calm demeanor, she was internally taken aback by his actions. Once Xiao Nanye had finished putting on both of her socks, she hurriedly covered them with her skirt. Seeing that the man was only wearing a single garment, she couldn't help but suggest, "You should wear the cloak first. It's cold outside." Isn't this the cloak that... She paused, suddenly recalling that the cloak had just wrapped around her wet feet. However, without hesitation, Xiao Nanye picked up the cloak from the carriage and draped it over his shoulders right in front of Jiang Peihuan. Outside the carriage, Han Feng's voice could be heard, "Master, are we heading back?" Xiao Nanye didn't answer Han Feng immediately. Instead, he looked at Jiang Peihuan. "Shall we return?" "Yes, let's go back." Despite the lively atmosphere outside, the sight of Xiao Juanhao had quashed any interest Jiang Peihuan had in staying. She nodded in agreement. Seeing her nod, Xiao Nanye directed to the outside, "Return to the general's mansion." "Yes." Soon after, Han Feng began driving the carriage back to the general's mansion. From a distance at the city river, Xiao Juanhao could clearly see Xiao Nanye's carriage. As the carriage moved further away, he clenched his fists, his eyes filled with mixed emotions. "Your Highness, would you like to proceed?" asked Lin Mengyao, noticing Xiao Junhao's fixed gaze. She followed his line of sight but saw nothing, prompting her to inquire softly. Hearing her voice, Xiao Juanhao collected his thoughts. He lost any interest in staying and said to Lin Mengyao, "I just remembered I have some matters to attend to at the palace. You can continue to enjoy here. But don't stay out too long, be wary of catching a cold." Turning to Jiang Yang, he continued, "Miss Jiang, one have urgent matters to attend to." "Of course, Your Highness. Please, attend to your affairs," Jiang Yang replied. Xiao Juanhao nodded at Jiang Yang and turned to leave. Once Xiao Juanhao left, the smile on Jiang Yang's face vanished instantly. Similarly, Lin Mengyao's playful demeanor faded. Lin Mengyao turned to Jiang Yang, "Miss Jiang, I'm feeling a bit unwell. 111 Take my leave." Having said that, Lin Mengyao turned around and left. Even though Jiang Yang is to be Xiao Junhao's main consort in the future, the Chujiang mansion has no influence in the capital, so Lin Mengyao was not afraid. However, after only a few steps, Jiang Yang's voice stopped her. "That ice hole earlier, it was your doing, wasn't it?" Jiang Yang's tone was one of certainty. Upon hearing this, surprise filled Lin Mengyao's eyes. But when she turned around, her face was filled with confusion. Looking at Jiang Yang, she smiled and said, "I don't understand what Miss Jiang is referring to. Miss Lin, although you acted swiftly, I believe the scent of the medicine still lingers on your fingertips." Upon hearing this, Lin Mengyao's expression changed. Facing Jiang Yang, Lin Mengyao directly spoke up, "Miss Jiang, are you trying to threaten me with this?" "No, it's not a threat, it's a warning." Meeting Lin Mengyao's puzzled look, a faint smile curled up at the corner of Jiang Yang's mouth. "Miss Lin, one know the Emperor has decreed me to be the main consort of Prince Qing. I'm aware that this angers you. But what's done is done, so you just have to accept it. Considering we will both be members of the Qing mansion in the future, I just want to remind you, crossing Miss Jiang is not in your best interest. If you're the only one who ends up unlucky, I wouldn't care. But one don't want my future to be jeopardized because of you. Otherwise, one can't promise one won't take action." By the end of her sentence, Jiang Yang's gaze towards Lin Mengyaro was an unmistakable threat. However, Lin Mengyaro just laughed lightly. Miss Jiang, you must have noticed, the prince seems to have special feelings for Miss Pei Huan. So what if he does? As soon as Lin Mengyaro finished her sentence, Jiang Yang responded indifferently. However, upon hearing Jiang Yang's reply, Lin Mengyaro was stunned. Facing her puzzled expression, Jiang Yang continued, "Do you really think that one will fall in love with the Prince Qing just because I marry into the Qing mansion? Miss Lin, I think you're a smart person. You should know that feelings are the most useless thing. I have never entered the Qing mansion for love." After saying this, Jiang Yang left the city river with her servant girls. Lin Mengyaro watched her leave with a complicated look in her eyes. Jian Pei Huan was completely unaware of what had happened at the city river. Xiao Nanye's carriage went straight to the general's mansion, and then they went to the Chrysanthemum Hall. Because they had already agreed to have dinner in the old madam's courtyard, the old madam had been waiting for them in the main hall. The room was warm with the charcoal burning. Seeing Jiang Pei Huan enter, the old madam smiled and asked, "Is it still lively outside?" "Very lively. When the weather gets better, I will accompany you outside. In this cold weather, I'd rather stay in. Once you marry into the Cheng mansion, you won't be able to leave at will. Don't worry, after Huan marries into the Cheng mansion, she can still leave whenever she wants, and even come back to the general's mansion. One can accompany her to stay for a few days," Xiao Nanye, sitting by the old madam, softly replied. When old Madame Jiang heard this, her eyes lit up. She turned to look at Xiao Nanye and asked softly, "Is what your highness said true?" "Of course, it is." "That's good. Old madam, the pots are ready." The sky darkened quickly in winter. Not long after they sat down, it was already dark outside. Nanny Shu walked in and said to old Madame Jiang. Hearing her words, old Madame Jiang said softly, "Then let's start eating." When Jiang Pei Huan helped old Madame Jiang into the dining room, the table was already filled with all kinds of dishes. There was a small pot in front of everyone. "There aren't many dishes in winter, so your highness can eat as you please." After sitting down on the chair, the old madam looked at Xiao Nanye and said softly. Chapter 215. The silver banknote in the box. Xiao Nanye sat next to Jiang Pei Huan. Hearing the old madam's words, he chuckled softly. "Old madam is being too polite. These dishes are already very plentiful." In the subsequent time, everyone quietly dined. The old madam tired quickly. After some conversations with Xiao Nanye, the old madam's eyes revealed a hint of fatigue. Seeing this, Jiang Pei Huan gently said, "Grandmother, it's getting late. Let me escort you to your room." The old madam was indeed a little tired. When she heard Jiang Pei Huan's words, she nodded. Xiao Nanye and Xue Qi had already gone to the main hall for tea. Therefore, Jiang Pei Huan helped the old madam to her room. After helping the old madam wash up with Nanny Shu, she watched the old madam lie down and prepared to leave. However, the old madam reached out and pulled Jiang Pei Huan's hand. "Grandmother, do you have anything else to tell me?" Feeling the warmth of her grandmother's hand, Jiang Pei Huan sat down next to the bed, looking at her inquisitively. The old madam did not speak, but glanced at Nanny Shu. A moment later, Nanny Shu handed over a wooden box. The old madam took the box from Nanny Shu and placed it in Jiang Pei Huan's palm. Seeing the box in her hand, Jiang Pei Huan could not help but ask, "Grandmother, what is this? Open it and take a look." Hearing the old madam's words, Jiang Pei Huan gently opened the box. When she saw what was inside, Jiang Pei Huan's eyes were full of surprise. Inside the box was a stack of silver banknote and a title deed. "Grandmother, this is some dowry money I kept aside for you." "No, grandmother, one can't accept this." Without a second thought, Jiang Pei Huan pushed the box back. Seeing her reaction, a touch of anger flashed in the old madam's eyes. "What, are you looking down on your grandmother's gifts?" Hearing this, Jiang Pei Huan gave a wry smile. "Grandmother, you know that's not what I mean. This belongs to you, grandmother. How can I take your things? If it's mine, I can give it to whomever I please." I chose to give it to you, so you should accept it. People often say the elderly can be like children, and in this moment, the old madam indeed exhibited some childlike stubbornness. Meeting Jiang Peihuan's eyes, old Madam Jiang said softly, "Don't worry, I didn't give you everything. I've kept some for myself. These are just material things. As long as you live a good life, that's all I wish for. Rest assured, grandmother. I promise I'll live a good life." Hearing the old madam's words, Jiang Peihuan no longer refused the items in the box and tightly held her grandmother's hand instead. The old madam's face brightened with a smile. She reached out, gently caressed Jiang Peihuan's face, and then said, "One can see that King Cheng is very fond of you. One believe you will live a good life with him. It's getting late. You should go back and rest early." "Okay." Jiang Peihuan nodded and then left her grandmother's room. When she reached the main hall, she saw Xiao Nanye standing alone in the courtyard. Dressed in white, he stood there, almost blending with the snowflakes that danced around him. "Xiao Nanye?" Seeing the man's back, Jiang Peihuan subconsciously called out. Hearing her voice, the man turned around. When he saw her, Xiao Nanye's eyes were filled with gentleness. As Jiang Peihuan approached, he stepped forward and gently helped her put on her cloak's hood. When he lowered his head, he saw the box in Jiang Peihuan's hand. "Did the old madam give this to you?" "Yes, grandmother said it's my dowry money. Old madam loves you very much." "Yes, grandmother has always been very loving towards me." As they spoke, the two began to walk towards the plum garden. Close to the entrance, Xiao Nanye suddenly turned to Jiang Peihuan and asked, "Huan, do you have any preferences regarding our future residence in the palace?" Hearing this, confusion flashed in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. Noticing her expression, Xiao Nanye softly said, "After our grand wedding, you will naturally move into the Cheng mansion. Do you have any specific requests for our future residence?" "Nothing special, simplicity is best." Jiang Peihuan remembered the opulence she had seen in the Cheng mansion. She wasn't particularly fond of extravagance. Acknowledging her response, Xiao Nanye nodded. As they reached the entrance of the plum garden, Jiang Peihuan said, "It's getting colder as night deepens. You should head back earlier." "All right. Rest well, and I'll come to see you tomorrow." After seeing her nod, Xiao Nanye turned and left, climbing over the wall just as before. Watching his retreating figure, a slight smile appeared on Jiang Peihuan's face. "Eldest miss, the coals in the room have been lit. Are you ready to rest?" Upon entering the room, Jiang Peihuan heard Yu's voice. Setting the box on the table, a white figure darted towards Jiang Peihuan. It was Xiao Bai. Petting Xiao Bai, she turned to Yu, "It's getting late, you should rest. One don't need you to attend to me now." "Yes, eldest miss. Please rest well." Millimeter. After Yu left, Jiang Peihuan got ready for bed. Instead of lying down immediately, she picked up a book by her bedside. Meanwhile, having returned to the Cheng mansion, Xiao Nanye didn't go to his room but entered his study. After sitting down on the chair, Xiao Nanye started to draw something on the white paper. Han Feng, seeing the drawing in Xiao Nanye's hands, was puzzled. After an unknown period of time, just as Han Feng was leaning against the wall and about to fall asleep, he heard Xiao Nanye's voice, "Go find a carpenter." "Master, why do you need a carpenter?" Hearing Xiao Nanye's voice, Han Feng instantly woke up. Xiao Nanye didn't say anything. Instead, he handed the blueprint to Han Feng. "Let the carpenter build the house in the backyard according to the blueprint." When he took the blueprint from Xiao Nanye, Han Feng subconsciously lowered his head. However, Han Feng's eyes were filled with surprise when he saw the drawings on the blueprint. Wasn't this the eldest Miss Plum Garden? Looking at Xiao Nanye, Han Feng could not help but ask, "Master, are you going to build another plum garden in the backyard of the Cheng mansion?" "Yes. Master, with you like this, young miss wouldn't think that she has always been living in the plum garden, right?" "What are you talking about? Hurry up and find a carpenter." "All right, 111 go now." After saying that, Han Feng left. The next day, upon waking up, Xiao Nanye planned to visit the general's mansion. However, Just as he was about to leave, a young palace eunuch informed him that Emperor Qiming wished to see him. Frowning slightly, Xiao Nanya still followed the eunuch to the palace. Qianqing Palace. Your Majesty, King Cheng has arrived. Chapter 216. Discussion of important matters. Emperor Qiming was reading the memorial. Wang Kuan was standing beside him. When he saw Xiao Nanya's slender figure appear at the door, Wang Kuan quickly said. Upon hearing the voice, Emperor Qiming put down the brush in his hand and looked up at Xiao Nanya. Walking up, Xiao Nanyi casually bowed to Emperor Qiming before taking a seat in a chair nearby. Then, he looked at Emperor Qiming and said, Imperial brother, why did you call me into the palace? Why? Can't I seek your company for no reason? A hint of anger flashed in Emperor Qiming's eyes as he said, looking at Xiao Nanya with evident irritation, Tell me, how long has it been since you last visited me in the palace? I've been rather busy recently, Xiao Nanya replied. Busy? Busy with what? Imperial brother, have you forgotten that in a month, your younger brother is going to get married? Upon hearing this, Emperor Qiming said nothing further. After a moment of silence, he looked at Xiao Nanya and said, I called you here today because I have something to discuss with you. Please speak, Imperial brother. Look at this. As he spoke, Emperor Qiming passed a memorial to Wang Kuan, who quickly took it and placed it before Xiao Nanya. Xiao Nanya took the memorial from Wang Kuan and opened it. After glancing over the contents, he frowned. So, the tribes from the grasslands wish to marry the princess as a peace alliance. According to the words of the northern border, that's what it means. Emperor Qiming replied. I've heard that they are sending their first prince for the marriage alliance. Given the distance, he will arrive in Qi Kingdom in no more than 3 days. As Emperor Qiming spoke, Xiao Nanya listened quietly. When the emperor finished, Xiao Nanya said, You seem reluctant about this marital alliance, Imperial brother. Princesses from our Qi Kingdom who have married into the northern border in the past haven't lived long lives. From our founding emperor to the previous one, more than 10 princesses have been married off to the northern border. Now, only the 9th and 11th princesses remain. 1 am loath to part with either. The 9th princess was the legitimate daughter of the empress and her only child. The 11th princess was born of the noble concubine and is the sister of prince, and the weather in the northern border is cold. It's indeed not suitable for the women of Qi Kingdom to live. Nanya, help me think of a way to prevent the 9th princess and the 11th princess from marrying into the northern border. Hearing Emperor Qiming's words, Xiao Nanya fell silent. A moment later, he directly looked at Emperor Qiming and said, Imperial brother, if you're reluctant about this alliance, simply decline the marriage proposal. I would like to directly refuse, but am worried that this will cause the northern border to harbor resentment. If the northern border dares to have rebellious thoughts, if the northern border dares to rebel, I am willing to lead troops to conquer it on your behalf. After all, Qi Kingdom is a vast empire. Why should we fear a minor kingdom like the northern border? While Xiao Nanye's tone was mild, his words reassured Emperor Qiming. After considering, the emperor said, In that case, when the first prince of the northern border arrives, you will help me personally greet him. I won't have the time. Please find someone else, Imperial brother. Facing Emperor Qiming's dissatisfied gaze, Xiao Nanya said calmly, Now, the princes are all grown up. It's time for you to give them some tasks. In the end, aren't you just wanting to be with your fiancé who hasn't formally married into the family? Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. If Imperial brother understands, then don't bother me. Xiao Nanya very openly admitted his intentions, which prompted Qiming Emperor to throw the seal from the table at him, shouting, Get out. Looking at the seal on the floor, Xiao Nanya calmly stood up and headed towards the door. But as he reached the door, he paused. Turning around, he smiled at Emperor Qiming and said, Imperial brother, since the first prince from the northern border has come to our kingdom to propose marriage, he must have brought many treasures, hasn't he? What? Are you planning to empty my private treasury? I am about to get married, and there are many places in the mansion that need decoration. When the first prince arrives, I'll come and ask for rewards." With that, Xiao Nanya left the hall. Qi Ming Emperor watched his retreating figure, chuckling to himself, "That boy, always eyeing the treasures in my possession. It shows the good bond between His Highness and Your Majesty." Wang Kuan, who was standing beside, quickly added. By the time Xiao Nanya left the palace, it was already afternoon. As he reached the palace gate, Han Feng greeted him, "Master, the carpenters have already arrived at the mansion. Do you want to oversee their work? After all, it's where the eldest miss will stay in the future." Hearing this, Xiao Nanya nodded. Over the next few days, he kept a close eye on the carpentry work in his mansion. On the fourth day, Yi Xiao came to the Cheng mansion. It turned out that the Shui family had arrived in the capital ahead of schedule. Considering what Xiao Nanya had previously mentioned, Jiang Peihuan sent Yi Xiao to check if he was available. An hour later, Xiao Nanya arrived at the general's mansion on Zui Yun. All of Jiang's immediate family was there. Seeing him arrive, Shui Yang softly laughed. "Why has your highness come?" "I heard that old Madame Shui has also come to the capital, so I naturally should go and welcome her." Hearing this, the smile in Shui Yang's eyes deepened, as she realized everything Xiao Nanya was doing was because he cared for Jiang Peihuan. Once everyone was ready, they headed out of the city. Inside the carriage sat Shui Yang and Jiang Peihuan. Jiang Hong led the way on horseback, followed by others. Jiang Xijin chose not to take the carriage. Seeing this, Shui Yang didn't insist. So at that moment, Jiang Xijin rode beside Xiao Nanya. "Brother-in-law, thank you for coming today." Ever since Xiao Nanya secretly gifted her some rare weapons, Jiang Xijin had been calling him brother-in-law. Jiang Peihuan corrected her a few times, but seeing Jiang Xijin continue, she let it be. Now, hearing Jiang Xijin's address, a smile appeared in Xiao Nanya's eyes. "It's my duty. You don't need to thank me. How have you been in the military camp lately?" Currently, Jiang Xijin, though dressed in a traditional dress, had her hair tied up with a red band. Her dress gave her a warrior's aura. However, Xiao Nanya's expression was very gentle when he saw Jiang Xijin like this. Hearing his question, she proudly replied, "I have achieved much recognition lately. I haven't let my parents down." Seeing her proud smile, Xiao Nanya also smiled. "In a while, I'll send you some." Chapter 217. Someone from the northern border. Upon hearing those words, Jiang Xijin's eyes lit up. She bowed slightly to Xiao Nanya and whispered, "Thank you, brother-in-law." When Jiang Peihuan lifted the curtains, she saw Xiao Nanya and Jiang Xijin secretly talking. Witnessing this scene, she silently smiled. As Jiang Peihuan unveiled the curtain, Xiao Nanya approached her. The man sat atop Zhu Yun's back but bent over to ask Jiang Peihuan, "Is there a matter?" Seeing the concern in the man's eyes, Jiang Peihuan shook her head. "I just wanted to check the weather outside. There won't be much snow today, don't worry." One sat inside the carriage, the other on a horse, yet they spoke softly. Shui Yang, sitting on the other side, watched this scene with a smile. Of her 3 children, Shui Yang felt most guilty about Jiang Peihuan. Now seeing Xiao Nanya care so much for Jiang Peihuan, Shui Yang felt very grateful. "Mother," one see maternal grandmother and the others. At that moment, Jiang Xijin's voice reached Shui Yang's ears. Hearing the sound, Shui Yang immediately lifted the curtain. The Shui family's convoy was not far away. Xu Yunyang supported old Madame Shui as she alighted from the carriage. She looked at the crowd in the distance and chuckled softly. "Mother, look, it's the younger sister and her husband." "Mother!" By now, Shui Yang had already stepped forward. Jiang Peihuan and the others quickly followed. Arriving in front of old Madame Shui, Shui Yang immediately knelt. "Mother, please forgive my unfilial behavior." Looking at Shui Yang kneeling before her, old Madame Shui's eyes reddened instantly. She reached out and helped Shui Yang up. "What nonsense are you talking about? Get up quickly." "Grandmother, aunt." Once Shui Yang stood up, Jiang Changbai led his 2 younger sisters forward to pay their respects. Seeing her grandson and little niece, old Madame Shui's eyes were full of smiles. Changbai and Sijin have grown so much. Mother-in-law, thank you for your hard work on this journey. Seeing that old Madame Shui was holding Jiang Changbai's hand and not letting go, Jiang Hong stepped forward and spoke softly. When old Madame Shui heard this, she waved her hand nonchalantly. It's just sitting in the carriage. It wasn't hard. As she spoke, old Madame Shui suddenly saw Xiao Nanye, who was standing beside Jiang Peihuan. She quickly went forward, but just as she was about to bow, Xiao Nanye held her up. Old Madame Shui, I came here today to pay my respects. Please don't treat me as an outsider. All right, since your highness says so, then this old one will be arrogant for a while. Yang help mother-in-law into the carriage first. Let's return to the mansion early. It's too cold outside. Mother, please get in the carriage. We can talk more once we're home. All right, let's discuss it later. At this moment, the children of the Shui family also came forward to pay their respects. Apart from brothers Shui Dao and Shui Hai, nearly all of the Shui family's masters were present. Among the younger generation, Shui Ji and Shui Ayu were present. A large group proceeded to the general's mansion. Jiang Peihuan didn't know that shortly after their departure, a group of strangers also arrived. Big brother, we've reached Qi Kingdom, but why hasn't anyone come to greet us? The luxurious carriage curtain was lifted, revealing a girl dressed in minority attire. She was beautiful, yet her expression had a touch of sharpness. Beside the carriage was a tall man on a horse, Ha Kai, the first prince of the northern border. Hearing the young girl's words in the carriage, Ha Kai said in a soft voice, "Our northern grassland tribe is a small country. I think the Qi Kingdom is waiting for us to take the initiative to pay our respects." Mph, who said that our tribe is from a small country? Zhuo Ma, you'd better remember your purpose for coming here, so control your temper. Before Zhuo Ma could finish her words, Ha Kai interrupted her coldly. Hearing Ha Kai's words, Zhuo Ma's eyes were filled with unwillingness, but she didn't dare to say anything. Although she was also a princess of the northern tribe, her father had dozens of princesses. If it weren't for her beauty, she wouldn't have come. After all, her birth mother was just a singer with no status in the northern border. First prince, it seems like someone is coming this way. Upon hearing this, Hachi looked into the distance. Zhuo Ma, who was inside the carriage, also lifted the curtain. Seeing the approaching men, Zhuo Ma's eyes revealed a hint of amazement. The men from the Qi Kingdom indeed appeared more handsome than those on the grassland. At this moment, Xiao Juanhao had already brought Zhao Yong to Ha Kai. Xiao Juanhao, having received an unexpected decree from the emperor, had been assigned to welcome the first prince of the northern grassland tribe alongside the newly appointed prince of Huainan. Hence, their delayed arrival. Seeing Ha Kai, Xiao Juanhao dismounted with a smile. "My apologies, first prince. I was held up by pressing matters in the palace, so I came late." Recognizing the individuals before him based on a whisper from his attendant, Ha Kai gave a slight smile and promptly greeted them. "It's an honor to meet Prince Qing and the Prince Huainan." Just then, the curtain of the carriage was lifted again. Zhuo Ma got off the carriage and looked at the two men standing in front of her. She laughed softly and said, "Zhuo Ma greets the Prince Qing and the Prince Huainan." The decree had only mentioned receiving the first prince, so Xiao Juanhao was somewhat puzzled upon seeing Zhuo Ma. He turned to Ha Kai and inquired, "First prince, who might this be?" "This is my sister, Zhuo Ma." "So it's Princess Zhuo Ma." Chapter 218, Shui Yu stays in Jiang Mansion. Older sister, why the formality? We are all family, no need for polite words. At this moment, people from the second and third households of the Jiang family came to greet. The old Madame Shui distributed the gifts for the occasion. After the greetings, old Madame Jiang said to old Madame Shui, "Elder sister, you should stay in the mansion during this time. It'll save the trouble of tidying up, and we can chat. It's not much of a bother. I had someone clean our residence in the city when I arrived," old Madame Shui replied with a soft chuckle. Hearing old Madame Jiang's words, old Madame Shui laughed softly. The Shui family has a residence in the capital, but no one had lived there for many years. However, no matter how old Madame Jiang tried to persuade her to stay, old Madame Shui insisted on staying in her own residence. Seeing that she insisted, old Madame Jiang did not say anything more. Instead, he looked at Shui Yang and said, Yang send your mother over with Hong later. See if there's anything that's missing and help to get everything ready. Yes, mother. After dinner, old Madame Shui took her leave. Jiang Hong and his wife escorted the Shui family members back. However, after leaving the Chrysanthemum Hall, Shui Yu suddenly said, Grandmother, one don't have anyone to talk to when we return to our residence. Why don't you let me stay in Aunt's residence? As she spoke, Shui Ru's gaze swept across Jiang Changbai from time to time. Shui Yu also saw Xiao Nanye, but after what happened in Qingju, she no longer dared to think about Xiao Nanye. She didn't even dare to make a sound in front of Xiao Nanye. Jiang Peihuan remained silent, but thinking about the incident in Qingju and Shui Ru's current demeanor, she couldn't help frown. But looking at old Madame Shui and her mother, she still didn't say anything. If you need company, just come over in a carriage. It's better not to disturb your aunt, old Madame Shui replied coldly to Shui Yu. Before Wang Fengyi could say something, she closed her mouth upon seeing the chill in old Madame Shui's eyes. Grandmother, one genuinely wished to stay here. Aunt hasn't seen family for many years. I can keep her company, Shui Yu pleaded, her eyes admiring the luxurious surroundings of the general's mansion. Seeing the mansion's splendor even at night, it was far grander than the Shui residence. When old Madame Shui heard this, anger appeared in her eyes. However, when Shui Yang heard this, she immediately said, Mother, if Ru likes it here, let her stay. Quan and Si Jin are also here. The girls can keep each other company. Yes, mother-in-law, Jiang Hong added. Hearing Jiang Hong and his wife's words, old Madame Shui didn't object anymore. Instead, she warned Shui Yu, since you are staying, don't cause trouble for your aunt. Rest assured, grandmother. Seeing that old Madame Shui had agreed, Shui Ru's eyes were filled with smiles. Old Madame Shui's eyes were filled with displeased. She hadn't initially intended to bring Shui Yu, but the girl had secretly hidden in the carriage. By the time they discovered her, it was too late to send her back. Yet, this was not something she could share with the Jiang family. Quan take care of Ru Shui Yang instructed. Don't worry, mother, Jiang Peihuan replied. Hearing Shui Yang's words, Jian Peihuan replied softly. Subsequently, Shui Yang and Jiang Hong escorted old Madame Shui out. After old Madame Shui left, Shui Yu immediately approached Jiang Changbua, cousin Changbua, what's fun in the capital? As she spoke, Shui Ru's hand directly hugged Jiang Changbai's arm. Jiang Changbai was stunned. After a few seconds, he pulled his hand away. When she tried to approach again, he stepped back and said softly, if you want to know fun places, ask Quan or Si Jin. Quan I'm a bit tired. I'll go rest first. After saying this, Jiang Changbai immediately ran away. Watching his departing figure, Shui Ru's eyebrows furrowed slightly, while a chill seemed to pass through Jiang Peihuan's eyes. However, when she turned to look at Shui Yu, Jiang Peihuan still smiled, saying, Cousin Yu, shall I show you to your courtyard? There's no hurry. Let me go with you to take a look at your courtyard first. Jiang Peihuan wanted to refuse subconsciously, but for some reason, she nodded in agreement. Standing to the side, Jiang Xijin observed the scene. She felt something was off but couldn't pinpoint what it was. Xijin, it's getting late. Go back to your courtyard and rest. Yes, elder sister. Jiang Xijin initially wanted to get closer to Shui Yu, but for some reason, she didn't like this cousin very much. This feeling was even stronger than her dislike for her second sister. After Jiang Xijin left, Jiang Peihuan took Shui Yu to her own plum garden. Along the way, Shui Yu carefully observed the plum garden. Seeing the scenery along the way, Shui Ru's eyes were filled with jealousy. Back in Qingju, her garden was considered exceptional among those of young ladies. But now, after seeing Jiang Peihuan's plum garden, she understood the true meaning of opulence. Cousin Peihuan, you don't need to find another courtyard for me. I'll just stay in yours, Huan. Before Shuai could finish, a deep voice interrupted her. She turned to see Xiao Nanya sitting in the courtyard. Upon seeing him, Shuai's face changed immediately. Jiang Peihuan glanced at the man, then turned back to Shuai. Cousin, what were you saying? I was saying that any nearby courtyard will do. No need to go out of your way. All right, 111 have you lead you there. Young miss, let me show you. Although Yu did not know what had happened, she knew Jiang Peihuan's temperament very well. Just by listening to Jiang Peihuan's tone, she knew that her eldest miss did not like this cousin. After Yu escorted Shuai away, Jiang Peihuan went to the man's side. Because of the snow, the pavilion had been sealed with cloth, but it was still a little cold. Looking at the man sitting on the bench, Jiang Peihuan smiled gently. Didn't you say you'd go back to the mansion first? Why are you sitting here? Why is she in the general's mansion? Didn't the old Madame Shui go to the Shui's residence in the capital? Mentioning Shuai, a hint of annoyance flashed in Xiao Nanya's eyes. Jiang Peihuan took a seat opposite him and softly said, she wanted to stay, so I let her. It saves my mother from the dilemma. As she spoke, Xiao Nanya poured her a cup of hot water. Placing it beside her, he whispered, it's late, and it's cold. Drink some hot water. Jiang Peihuan wasn't thirsty, but she picked up the cup after hearing his words. As she drank, a silver hairpin suddenly appeared in his hand. What is this? Chapter 219. Shuai's thoughts. The silver hairpin in the man's hand was of a very simple design, but just from its material, Jiang Peihuan felt it was extraordinary. Indeed, right in front of Jiang Peihuan, the man pulled at the top of the hairpin, revealing a hidden small dagger in front of her. Looking at her ring, and then at the hairpin in the man's hand, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but laugh. Are you trying to turn all my jewelry into hidden weapons? Jiang Peihuan said it offhandedly, but when Xiao Nanya heard it, he nodded seriously. With these things by your side, I feel more at ease. While speaking, Xiao Nanya gently inserted the silver hairpin into Jiang Peihuan's hair. Without a mirror, Jiang Peihuan couldn't see the hairpin. She looked up at the man in front of her. Does it look good? Yes. Hearing her words, the man nodded. The sound of snowflakes falling could be heard, and as Jiang Peihuan watched the heavy snow outside the pavilion, she showed a hint of worry, wondering if Shui Yang and Jiang Hong had returned yet. But as Xiao Nanya watched the ever-growing snowflakes, he turned to Jiang Peihuan and said, the snow is getting heavier. You should go back to your room. I'll head home. All right. Seeing Jiang Peihuan nod, the man then turned and left the pavilion. Watching Jiang Peihuan enter her room, the man left the plum garden. Back in her room, Jiang Peihuan wasn't sleepy. The Shui family's house was a distance from the general's mansion, and she was somewhat worried about Shui Yang and Jiang Hong. Eldest miss, are you worried about the general and madam? Seeing Jiang Peihuan constantly looking outside, Yu approached and said softly. Hearing her, Jiang Peihuan nodded. Then, she picked up a hand warmer from the side. Accompany me to my older brother's courtyard. Let's go to the entrance to meet my father and mother. Yes. Xiao Bai, don't mess around. When Yu opened the door, Xiao Bai, who was beside the bed, ran directly to Jiang Peihuan's feet. Seeing it constantly tugging at Jiang Peihuan's skirt, Yu gently scolded, but Xiao Bai wasn't afraid of her and acted as if he didn't hear. Watching this, a smile appeared in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. Handing the hand warmer to Yu, Jiang Peihuan bent down to pick up Xiao Bai. Looking at the little creature in her arms, she whispered, do you want to go out with me? Xiao Bai couldn't speak, but at the sound of Jiang Peihuan's voice, it licked her hand. Feeling the wet touch on her fingertips, Jiang Peihuan's expression became even gentler. She stretched out her hand, gently patting Xiao Bai's head, and then carrying it outside. Since you're not afraid of the cold, 111 take you with me. You little fellow, you seem to have gained weight these few days. How could he not? Lua feeds him all sorts of delicious food every day. Sometimes, She would rather not eat it herself than let the wolf cubs eat it. Jiang Peihuan also knew about this. The two of them, carrying Xiao Bai, headed to Jiang Changbai's courtyard. Before they reached the entrance, Jiang Peihuan heard Jiang Changbai's voice. "Cousin, where are you? It's getting colder. You should go back to your room to rest. Cousin Changbai, the snow is getting heavier. Why don't you let me stay in your room to avoid the snowstorm?" Hearing Shueru's voice, Jiang Peihuan frowned. Pushing open the courtyard door, Jiang Peihuan walked straight in. Jiang Changbai was standing helplessly at the door, while Shueru was looking at him tenderly, holding a food box in her hand. Seeing this scene, a hint of sarcasm appeared in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. When they were in Chrysanthemum Hall, Jiang Peihuan had noticed that Shueru was looking at her elder brother with a strange expression. However, she thought she'd at least have to wait a couple of days, but she didn't expect Shueru to be so impatient. "Elder brother?" Seeing that Jiang Changbai was wearing only a thin garment, Jiang Peihuan approached and spoke softly. "Huan, you're here." Seeing Jiang Peihuan approaching him, a big smile appeared on Jiang Changbai's face, and he visibly relaxed. "You, go into elder brother's room and fetch his cloak." "Yes, eldest miss." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's instruction, Yu quickly entered Jiang Changbai's room. Holding the food box, Shueru frowned upon seeing this. "Cousin Huan, why are you here? Shouldn't one be the one asking that? Cousin, are you?" Facing Jiang Peihuan's gaze, Shueru felt a chill. Yet when she looked up again, she found Jiang Peihuan's expression to be as gentle as always. Glancing at the food box in her hand, Shueru said softly, "It's so cold, and I was worried that my cousin would catch a cold, so I prepared some sweet soup for him." "Cousin Yu is very thoughtful. But you seem to forget that this is the general's mansion. There are servants to take care of my brother. In the future, it might be better if you don't trouble yourself with such tasks. While those in the know appreciate your intentions, others might gossip about a young lady being alone with a man late at night. It might tarnish your reputation. Young master, your cloak." When Shueru heard Jiang Peihuan's words, her eyes were filled with anger. Just as she was about to speak, she saw Yu walking over with Jiang Changbai's cloak. However, she showed no intention of helping Jiang Changbai put it on. Noticing this, Shueru glared at Yu and said coldly, "You're so clueless. Can't you help my cousin with his cloak? Cousin, let me help you put it on." As Shueru approached with the intent to help, Jiang Changbai sidestepped her before she could touch him. Meeting her embarrassed gaze, Jiang Changbai said coldly, "No need. I can manage it myself." After saying this, he quickly tied his cloak around himself. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan turned to her brother and suggested, "Elder brother, the snow seems to be getting heavier. I'm not sure if our parents have set out yet. Should we go and meet them?" "All right, I'll have the carriage prepared immediately." With that, Jiang Changbai walked out of the courtyard. When he reached the door, he remembered that Shueru was still standing at the door of his room. He turned around and said, "Cousin, you should go back to your room and rest early. Don't catch a cold." After leaving the courtyard, Jiang Changbai sincerely bowed to Jiang Peihuan, "Huan, it's lucky you came. Otherwise, I fear I wouldn't have been able to get away today." Chapter 220. Shueru was bitten. Seeing the relieved look on Jiang Changbai's face, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but feel both amused and exasperated. "Elder brother, you've noticed that cousin Ruhui has ulterior motives for you, haven't you?" Jiang Changbai didn't speak but nodded in agreement. Despite having spent most of his time in the military camp, he was still a gentleman of a renowned family, and he was well aware of such schemes. Seeing his nod, Jiang Peihuan said, "Elder brother, if you don't want any entanglements with cousin Yu in the future, merely avoiding her won't suffice. You must outright reject her. But she is a guest in our home. Moreover, our mother hasn't seen our maternal grandmother in years. If I'm too direct, one fear one might put our mother in a difficult position. You are our mother's own son. Do you really think she would sideline you in favor of a niece?" Besides, have you forgotten about Xin? Upon hearing Liu Xin's name, Jiang Changbai's expression became serious. Turning to Jiang Peihuan, he said, Huan, you are right. The siblings soon left the general's mansion. Just as they reached the gate, they saw Jiang Hong's carriage arriving. As Jiang Hong helped Shui Yang out of the carriage, they spotted Jiang Changbai and Jiang Peihuan. Seeing them, Shui Yang said with a smile, Where are you two going at this late hour? Of course, we came to pick you up, Jiang Peihuan responded, approaching to assist Shui Yang. Observing her cheerful demeanor, she deduced that the arrival of old Madame Shui had brought much joy to Shui Yang. For that reason alone, Jiang Peihuan felt she could tolerate the presence of Shui Yu. Mother, has everything been arranged for maternal grandmother? Jiang Peihuan asked softly as she helped Shui Yang inside. Shui Yang, seeing the concern in her eyes, smiled and nodded. Before coming to the capital, your maternal grandmother had already sent someone to clean the residence. Everything is ready. That's good to hear. You don't need to accompany us further. It's too cold. Go back to your courtyard. When they reached a fork in the path, Shui Yang lightly patted Jiang Peihuan's hand and whispered with a smile. Jiang Peihuan didn't insist on continuing, especially since Jiang Hong was by Shui Yang's side. Instead, Jiang Hong said to his son, Escort your sister back to her courtyard. Make sure she doesn't trip. Yes, Jiang Changbai replied, bowing to his parents. He then turned to Jiang Peihuan, Let's go. 111 Escort you back. Father, mother, please rest early. Yes, go ahead. After bowing to them, Jiang Peihuan turned to leave. But suddenly, the little wolf cub named Xiao Bai in her arms darted out. However, when Jian Peihuan turned around, Xiao Bai, who was in her arms, suddenly dashed out. Seeing Xiao Bai's abrupt move startled Jiang Peihuan. Xiao Bai, come back. Regardless of Jiang Peihuan's calls, Xiao Bai dashed towards the bushes, followed by the terrified scream of Shui Yu. Get away. Get off of me. Are you Shui Yang, hearing the screams, rushed towards the bushes, with Jiang Peihuan and Jiang Changbai quickly following. When Jiang Peihuan walked over, she saw Xiao Bai biting Shui Ru's calf tightly. Although Xiao Bai was only a wolf cub, it already grew teeth. In addition, Lu had been feeding it bones all this time, so Xiao Bai's teeth were quite sharp. Seeing this, Shui Ru's eyes filled with agony. Xiao Bai, come back. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's voice, Xiao Bai loosened its teeth and ran to her side. Jiang Peihuan quickly picked up the wolf cub. Auntie, my leg hurts. Shui Yang was confused by the situation in front of her, but when she heard Shui Ru scream, she quickly shouted, Quick, call the doctor. Subsequently, Shui Yang turned to Jiang Changbai and said, Changbai, quickly carry Yu back. Upon hearing Shui Yang's words, Jiang Changbai's face stiffened. However, seeing this, a hint of a smile appeared in Shui Ru's eyes. But that smile on Shui Ru's face quickly froze as Jiang Peihuan stepped forward, blocking Jiang Changbai. She then said to Shui Yang, Mother, considering the distinction between men and women, it's best if elder brother doesn't do it. I will carry cousin instead. Saying that, Jiang Peihuan handed Xiao Bai over to Jiang Changbai. Without waiting for Shui Yu to respond, Jiang Peihuan bent down and hoisted Shui Yu horizontally off the ground. Having practiced martial arts since childhood, carrying Shui Yu was nothing to Jiang Peihuan. However, being lifted by Jiang Peihuan, Shui Ru's eyes darkened with displeasure. By the time Jiang Peihuan carried Shui Yu back to her courtyard, the doctor had already arrived. After examining Shui Yu, the doctor reassured Shui Yang, Madam, don't worry. The young lady's leg injury is not severe. A few doses of medicine will see her well. Thank you, doctor. You're too polite, madam. Upon hearing the doctor's reassurance, Shui Yang sighed in relief. At this moment, Shui Yu, with a sullen look, glared at Xiao Bai in Jiang Peihuan's arms. Aunt, this dog even bites people. Why not just kill it? Cousin Yu, if you weren't lurking suspiciously behind the bush, Xiao Bai wouldn't have bitten you. How could you just suggest killing Xiao Bai? Before Shui Yang could speak, Jiang Changbai, standing next to Jiang Peihuan, coldly retorted. Hearing this, tears welled up in Shui's eyes. She turned to Shui Yang. Aunt, I was just so scared. Today it bit me, but what if it bites grandmother or you in the future? Hearing this, Shui Yang's eyes were a little conflicted. When Jiang Peihuan heard this, her eyes looked colder than ever. Chapter 221. Gifts Yes, Mother. Jiang Changbai had been eager to leave for a while. Hearing Shui Yang's words, he nodded promptly. After paying his respects to Shui Yang, he quickly said to Jiang Peihuan, let's go. Jiang Peihuan bowed to Shui Yang and then followed Jiang Changbai out. Once outside, Jiang Changbai couldn't help but ask Jiang Peihuan, cousin Ji and Archie both have good personalities. Why is this cousin Yu so different? Don't say any more. If mother heard it, wouldn't it make things difficult for her? Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Jiang Changbai remained silent. By the time Jiang Peihuan returned to the plum garden, it was already deep into the night. She laid down on her bed, and Xiao Bai crawled into her blanket. Looking at Xiao Bai, who's only showing its head, Jiang Peihuan playfully tapped its little head. You can't just bite people randomly. Xiao Bai thought that Jiang Peihuan was playing with it. Looking at her outstretched finger, it stuck out its tongue and licked it. Eldest miss, it's already very late. You should go to sleep. Yu moved the charcoal fire to the side, then looked at Jiang Peihuan on the bed and said, I know, you should go to sleep too. Yes. After the lamp went out, Jiang Peihuan closed her eyes. In the past, during winters, her hands and feet would always feel cold. After reincarnating, not only did she intensify her training, but she also began to take care of her health. Now, she wasn't as cold as before. Winters made everyone feel more sleepy, and Jiang Peihuan was no exception. As she sat up, she saw Yu coming in with hot water. Seeing Jiang Peihuan sitting up, Yu said with a smile, Eldest miss, you finally woke up. The old madam sent people to ask about you several times. Really? After freshening up, I'll visit grandmother in the chrysanthemum hall. Jiang Peihuan wasn't into dressing up much. So, after a quick wash, she headed straight to chrysanthemum hall. Before reaching the door, she heard laughter inside. Old madam, this is a token of my appreciation. One hope you won't find it too modest. The person who spoke was Liu Xin. Ever since Liu Xin saved the old madam last time, the old madam's attitude towards her had changed a lot. Every time Liu Xin came to visit Liu Xiu, the old madam would also call her to the chrysanthemum hall for a chat. When Jiang Peihuan entered, she saw the old madam holding a forehead ornament, which was elegant and delicately embroidered. Seeing the ornament in old madam's hand, Jiang Peihuan said with a soft laugh, Grandmother, this new ornament suits you very well. This was made by Xin Er. It's a token of her affection. Previously, the old madam looked down on the Liu family for being merchants and didn't want much contact with Liu Xin. However, after getting to know her, she found Liu Xin very considerate. Given the wealth of the Liu family, Liu Xin could have easily gifted expensive items. But instead, everything she prepared for the old madam was handmade by her, making it even more precious. Xin Er is very skillful. You flatter me, Sister Jiang. One can only make simple things. Seeing Jiang Peihuan come in, Liu Xin stood up and bowed to her. The old madam handed the item in her hand to Nanny Shu. After that, she waved at Jiang Peihuan, touched her fingertips, and seeing that Jiang Peihuan's palms were warm, the old madam whispered, A deer was delivered from the villa yesterday. Deer meat tastes best when fresh. Since you're awake, 111 have someone roast the deer meat later. You should eat more. Okay. Hearing the old madam's words, Jiang Peihuan nodded with a smile. Grandmother, you really are biased. When there's something delicious, you only think of Huan and not your grandson. The curtain of the main room was directly lifted, and Jiang Changbai, dressed in a dark blue padded jacket, came to the old madam. Trailing behind him, drenched in sweat, was Jiang Xijin. Upon entering, Jiang Changbai's gaze instinctively fell on Liu Xin. Though Jiang Changbai quickly averted his eyes, the old madam still noticed. If it had been in the past, she would have disapproved, but after spending time with Liu Xin, the old madam no longer opposed the idea. Through her lifetime, the old madam has come to realize that Liu Xin's character is impeccable. "Grandmother, it's been a while since you've seen me. Have you missed me?" Jiang Xijin ran to the old madam and held her hand. Seeing her behavior, the old madam used her handkerchief to wipe the sweat from Jiang Xijin's forehead, chuckling, "You're a young lady, yet you behave like a monkey every day. In grandmother's heart, only my elder sister is the best. You cheeky monkey." The old madam tapped Jiang Xijin's forehead lightly and continued to laugh. "Old madam, people from King Cheng's mansion have sent gifts. What did King Cheng send this time?" The old madam seems accustomed to Cheng Mansion, frequently sending gifts. A moment later, Han Feng led his men into the chrysanthemum hall. Behind him was a little deer that was still bleeding. After bowing to old Madam Jiang, Han Feng smiled and said, "Old madam, this deer was personally hunted by the prince. He said he wanted you to taste something fresh. His Highness is very thoughtful." Hearing Han Feng's words, the old madam's face was full of smiles. She glanced at Nanny Shu, who immediately went forward and handed Han Feng a pouch. "Thank you for your reward, old madam." Accepting the pouch from Nanny Shu, Han Feng expressed his gratitude. "You're a favorite of His Highness, so I won't delay you any further. Eldest miss, Master has also sent something for you. He said that he wanted to give it to you personally." Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan looked at old Madam Jiang. Chapter 222. Give it all to him. It was due to Ha Kai's proposal in her past life that Jiang Peihuan came to know about Ha Kai in her previous life. Ha Kai wanted to marry the princess of the Qi kingdom. However, Emperor Qiming was reluctant to part with his beloved 9th and 11th princesses. Yet Ha Kai was adamant about the marriage, bringing countless treasures as dowry. Because of these treasures, Emperor Qiming eventually agreed to Ha Kai's request, but instead of choosing from the 2 princesses, he selected from among the daughters of the courtiers. In her previous life, Ha Kai had taken a fancy at her at first glance. However, Xiao Juanhao would never let her be married off to the distant northern borders. Instead, he shifted his attention to Jiang Xijin. Though in the end, Ha Kai dismissed Jiang Xijin due to her young age, she was still forcibly taken to his chamber in her previous life. Because of this, Jiang Xijin bore a reputation that haunted her. In this life, Jiang Peihuan was determined not to let such an event happen again. "Eldest miss." Hearing Han Feng's voice, Jiang Peihuan was jolted back to reality. Looking at him, she said softly, "I heard about it by chance." Han Feng, hearing this response, was full of confusion. But Jiang Peihuan quickly changed the subject. "What did Xiao Nanya send you here for?" "You'll know when you see it," Han Feng said. As he spoke, he gently clapped his hands, and an attendant stepped forward holding a potted plant. In the pot was a plum blossom. But not just any plum blossom, it was the rare green plum. At this point, the young buds on the green plum were already exquisitely beautiful. Seeing the green plum, a smile appeared in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. "You take this green plum back to the plum garden." "Yes." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Yu smiled and stepped forward. "Eldest miss, I shall take my leave. Do you have any messages for the master? The weather is getting colder, tell him to take care of himself." "Yes." Han Feng bowed respectfully to Jiang Peihuan before leaving the general's mansion. Jiang Peihuan stood quietly outside. Once her emotions settled, she entered the chrysanthemum hall. In the imperial palace. "Are you listening to me?" Emperor Qiming, looking at the report in his hand, was frustrated. He wanted to discuss banquet matters with Xiao Nanya. But when he turned his head, he saw Xiao Nanya carefully wiping his jade pendant, occasionally sipping tea, a premium tea from his private collection. Qiming had called Xiao Nanya several times, but he seemed to ignore him. Dropping the report, Qiming looked at Xiao Nanya with dissatisfaction. Finally, catching the emperor's voice, Xiao Nanya replied, which almost made Qi Ming spit blood in anger. This time, Xiao Nanya finally heard Emperor Qi Ming's voice, but the words that came out of his mouth made Emperor Qi Ming so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "What were you saying, imperial brother? I asked about your opinion on the banquet." Qi Ming's eyes were full of anger, but he still managed to keep calm. Hearing this, Xiao Nanya nonchalantly responded, "Just hold the banquet as usual. After all, it's just a small northern kingdom. Why are you so troubled?" Seeing Xiao Nanya continuously wiping his jade pendant, Qi Ming commented disdainfully, "This jade pendant might be of good quality, but the carving is quite crude. I'll get you 2 better ones later." "No, I only want this one." "Heh, that's odd." Qi Ming looked surprised at Xiao Nanya's response. After glancing at the pendant, he said sarcastically, "Is this jade pendant some kind of treasure?" "You guessed right, imperial brother. This pendant is indeed a treasure. It was a gift from Huan Er. Imperial brother, with all your consorts, has any of them carved a jade pendant for you?" It seemed that none had. Seeing Xiao Nanya's triumphant expression, Qi Ming felt a bit irked. "I heard you hunted a deer last night. After all I've given you, why didn't you gift some of the deer meat to me? Next time." "The deer I hunted last night was sent to the general's mansion." "Look at you." Qi Ming looked exasperated. "All right, you may leave. You're making me annoyed." Seeing Xiao Nanya still sitting and wiping his pendant, Qi Ming waved him off irritably. The latter leisurely rose from his chair. As he left, he drained the tea from the table. It seemed he thought of something, and Xiao Nanya walked straight to Emperor Qi Ming's desk. "What are you doing?" Seeing him approach, Emperor Qi Ming's eyes were full of caution. Meeting Emperor Qi Ming's guarded gaze, Xiao Nanya softly laughed, "Imperial brother, I find this tea quite delightful. I wonder if I could have some." "You can't, get out." Before Xiao Nanya could finish, Emperor Qi Ming interrupted him coldly. "All right, if you don't want to give it to me, then don't." Hearing Emperor Qi Ming's words, Xiao Nanya left the Chenqing palace without any hard feelings. However, not long after Xiao Nanya left, a young eunuch walked in, holding a black cloak in his hands. Seeing him, Emperor Qi Ming coldly asked, "What is this?" "Your Majesty, this is the cloak King Cheng sent you." Hearing the eunuch's words, Emperor Qi Ming paused, and looking at the cloak in the eunuch's hands, he set down the brush he was holding. Wang Kuan, who was at the side, quickly took the cloak from the eunuch. Presenting it to Emperor Qi Ming, Wang Kuan smiled, "His Highness, King Cheng is very thoughtful. This is made of top-grade ink fox fur. This brat." Touching the cloak in Wang Kun's hand, Emperor Qi Ming commented. Seeing the smile in Emperor Qi Ming's eyes, Wang Kuan softly asked, "Would your Majesty like to try it on?" Let's try it." Wang Kuan dismissed the eunuch and personally helped Emperor Qi Ming put on the cloak. The size of the cloak was perfect, and Emperor Qi Ming's eyes shone with happiness. Turning to Wang Kuan, he whispered, "How does it look?" "It makes your Majesty appear even more majestic." "Didn't that brat just say the tea was good?" "Check the storeroom to see how much we have left, give him some." "Never mind, give it all to him. Also, see if there are other fine teas, and give those to him as well." Emperor Qi Ming carefully removed the cloak, then cheerfully addressed Wang Kuan. Hearing Emperor Qi Ming's words, Wang Kuan quickly responded with a smile, "Your Majesty is truly kind to King Cheng. I've watched him grow up since he was a child. If I don't treat him well, who will? In another month, His Highness King Cheng will be getting married. By then, the consort will surely take good care of him." Miss Jiang's character is indeed commendable. She even knows to carve a jade pendant for Nanya personally. However, her craftsmanship is rather lacking. Standing to the side, Wang Kuan heard this but remained silent, only smiling. Chapter 223, Reward. Considering her decent nature, go to the storeroom and find something to reward her. Yes. After bowing to Emperor Qi Ming, Wang Kuan prepared to leave. However, Just as he reached the door, he heard Emperor Qiming's voice from behind. Wait. Your Majesty, do you have any other instructions? Hearing the Emperor's voice, Wang Kuan immediately halted and turned to look at him. After you've selected the items, don't send the young eunuch. Go personally. It can be seen as a gesture of goodwill from me to Xiao Nanya. Hearing Emperor Qiming's words, Wang Kun's eyes showed surprise, but he still nodded with a smile. Yes. Xiao Nanya did not know anything about this. At that moment, Xiao Nanya was heading out of the palace. Zhua Ma, who had just entered, instinctively turned her head. Upon seeing Xiao Nanya, her eyes were filled with admiration. Who is this man? Zhua Ma wanted to chase after him, but Xiao Nanya had already left the palace. Watching the man's back as he got into the carriage, Zhua Ma looked at the palace maid beside her excitedly. Who is that? Princess, that is His Highness King Cheng. King Cheng? Is he also the Emperor's son? No, His Highness King Cheng is the Emperor's younger brother and the imperial uncle of the princes. Is he married? Hearing Zhua Ma's question, the palace maid standing nearby showed surprise but still whispered, King Cheng isn't married yet, but where is the King Cheng mansion? Zhua Ma got the answer she wanted and lost interest in the rest. Although unsure of Zhua Ma's intentions, the palace maid still provided the address. As Zhua Ma left the palace, Wang Kuan went to the general's mansion with the rewards. Jiang Peihuan had just eaten venison in the chrysanthemum hall and was chatting with the old madam when she heard that the chief eunuch from the emperor's side had arrived. Thinking of past events involving her family, Jiang Peihuan's heart raced. Although many things had changed in this life, she still felt a bit panicked. Deputy General Liu, who was walking beside Jiang Peihuan, sensed her unease and quickly reassured her, Eldest miss, don't worry. One saw Wang Kuan smiling, and the young eunuchs behind him are carrying many items. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan's eyes revealed some surprise. When Jiang Peihuan arrived at the main hall, all the members of the Jiang family were already there. Even Shuai Yu, assisted by a maid, had come out. Wang Kuan was drinking tea. Seeing Jiang Peihuan approach, he immediately set down his cup and said with a smile, Eldest miss, you've arrived. Prepare to receive the emperor's decree. Jiang Peihuan stepped forward and knelt respectfully. The emperor has ordered that Jiang Peihuan, the eldest daughter of the general's mansion, has a noble personality and good moral character. She is hereby granted special rewards. After speaking, Wang Kuan gestured to the eunuchs behind him to present the rewards to Jiang Peihuan. Jiang Xijin and Jiang Ruyun immediately stepped forward to accept the gifts. When Jiang Peihuan got up, she saw the rewards are mostly jewelry. However, she couldn't understand why Emperor Qiming would suddenly reward her. Was it because of the grain transport last time? But so much time had passed since then. Even if the emperor wanted to reward her for that, he wouldn't have waited until now. Eldest miss, congratulations. At this moment, Wang Kuan approached Jiang Peihuan to offer his congratulations. Seeing him, Jiang Peihuan stepped forward, giving a slight curtsy, then she said with a smile, Thank you, Chief Eunuch. While speaking, Jiang Peihuan handed a pouch personally to Wang Kuan. The pouch felt light, clearly not containing gold or silver, but probably a banknote. Accepting the pouch, the smile in Wang Kun's eyes deepened. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, he whispered, Eldest miss truly is a person of delicate and exquisite character. Chief Eunuch, you flatter me. Smiling, Jiang Peihuan lowered her voice and said, Chief Eunuch, there's something I don't understand, and I hope you can enlighten me. I dare not claim such a role, eldest miss. If you have questions, just ask me directly. Why has the emperor suddenly bestowed so many jewels? Seeing the confusion in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, Wang Kun's smile remained unchanged. As she looked to him for answers, he whispered back, for this question, Miss might want to ask King Cheng. Because of Xiao Nanya? Thank you, Chief Eunuch. Smiling, Jiang Peihuan gave a small curtsy and said, I'll see you out, Chief Eunuch. When they reached the entrance of the general's mansion, Wang Kuan smiled and said to Jiang Peihuan, Eldest miss, it's fine, one can carry on myself from here. Chief Eunuch, take care. Wang Kuan smiled and nodded before boarding the carriage. Returning to the main hall, Jiang Peihuan heard an exclamation, "These jewels are so beautiful. Cousin, are you these are imperial gifts. Except for elder sister, ordinary people shouldn't touch them casually." Jiang Xijin saw Shuai trying to pin a gold hairpin in her hair, and she immediately took it back. Seeing Jiang Xijin's action, Shuai's eyes flashed with displeasure. Spotting Jiang Peihuan entering, she turned to her and said, "Cousin Huan, the emperor has given you so many gifts, you probably can't use all these jewels. How about sharing some with us?" Both Jiang Ruyun and Jiang Xijin were shocked by this. Shuai was Shui Yang's niece after all, so Jiang Ruyun, the niece of the second branch, couldn't say anything. However, Jiang Xijin spoke directly. "Cousin, are you know that this is an imperial gift. Don't you know that imperial gifts cannot be given to others? As long as you keep quiet, who will know?" Upon hearing Shuai's audacious words, even the normally proud Jiang Xijin was left speechless. Jiang Peihuan's expression darkened at this scene. Yet, seemingly thinking of something, Jiang Peihuan smiled at Shuai and said, "If Cousin Ru likes that gold hairpin, I'll gift it to you. However, it's an imperial gift. If someone finds out, it might bring fatal trouble. So, Cousin Ru, keep it for personal enjoyment and never wear it outside." As she spoke, Jiang Peihuan had already handed the golden hairpin to Shuai. Taking it from Jiang Peihuan, excitement filled Shuai's eyes. But hearing Jiang Peihuan's warning, her smile faded a bit. Jiang Peihuan didn't look at her any longer and turned to Jiang Xijin and Jiang Ruyun, "Both of you, help me take these items to the plum garden." "Yes, big sister." "Yes, elder sister." On the way, Jiang Xijin managed to hold her tongue. But once they reached the plum garden, she couldn't hold back any longer. Chapter 224. Go find someone else. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, she said with indignation in her eyes, "Eldest sister, why did you give the golden hairpin granted to you by the emperor to Cousin Ru? Since she asked for it, it wouldn't be right to refuse her completely. No matter what, she's mother's niece. For mother's sake, we can't be too calculative. But one guess she wouldn't dare wear the golden hairpin outside. She can only look at it and not use it. The one who will suffer is her." Hearing the first part of Jiang Peihuan's words, Jiang Xijin had a hint of melancholy in her eyes, but after hearing the last sentence, her eyes were filled with smiles. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, she gave a thumbs up with a smile, "Eldest sister, you're the smart one. If you like any of these items, you can take them." Jiang Peihuan didn't particularly care for these jewels and ornaments. Moreover, Xiao Nanya had also gifted many to her in the past, which she had simply stored away. After speaking with Jiang Xijin, Jiang Peihuan turned to Jiang Ruyun, "You two can choose what you like. In a little over a month, you'll marry into the Cao family. Consider these items as my dowry gift to you." "Thank you, elder sister. But these items are imperial gifts. Would it be a problem if the emperor found out?" Although she was tempted by the jewelry, Jiang Ruyun still had reservations. Hearing her words, Jiang Peihuan whispered, "It's fine. It's not as strict as it was during the previous dynasty. Second sister, don't overthink. If Cousin Ru dares to take them, what do we have to worry about?" Jiang Xijin used to dislike Jiang Ruyun, but seeing Shuai's attitude now, she suddenly felt that Jiang Ruyun was much better. Everything seems worse when compared. "Eldest sister, I want this jade pendant." As she spoke, Jiang Xijin had already picked up a pair of jade pendants from the tray. Jiang Peihuan nodded without speaking. Jiang Xijin quickly chose her items, but Jiang Ruyun hesitated over hairpins. In the end, she picked up a pearl hairpin. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, Jiang Ruyun whispered, "Elder sister, I want this pearl hairpin. This one's yours. And this set of ornaments, give it to our second aunt when you go back." "Elder sister, this is too valuable. It's just a set of ornaments. It's not a big deal." "Thank you very much, elder sister." Jiang Ruyun quietly thanked her as she looked at the items that Jiang Peihuan handed over. After Jiang Ruyun left, Jiang Peihuan handed another set of ornaments to Jiang Xijin. Take this set to the elegant garden and give it to our third aunt. All right. Subsequently, Jiang Peihuan also chose some gifts for old Madame Jiang and Shui Yang. Even for old Madame Shui and the two ladies of the Shui family, Jiang Peihuan didn't leave them out. By the time she had distributed all the items, the trays on the table were nearly empty. However, Jiang Peihuan was still curious about what Xiao Nanye had done to earn such a reward from Emperor Qiming at this time. Jiang Peihuan waited for Xiao Nanye to arrive and inquire. But he didn't show up all night. Eldest miss, it's getting late. You should rest. Yue carefully moved the brazier aside and then turned to advise Jiang Peihuan. Jiang Peihuan glanced outside and softly asked, "Has it started snowing heavily outside?" "Yes, it seems this winter will be very cold." "All right, you should go and rest too." "Yes." After bowing to Jiang Peihuan, Yue left her room. When Jiang Peihuan lay down, Xiao Bai quickly ran up to the bed, finding its usual spot. Seeing its movements, Jiang Peihuan softly chuckled, "You sure know your place." Could it be that the snowstorm was too intense? Jiang Peihuan lay down, filled with doubts. She realized that she seemed to have gotten used to seeing Xiao Nanye every day. At this moment, Xiao Nanye was looking coldly at the woman named Shuama in front of him. He was about to leave for the general's mansion, but just as he reached the door, he heard the doorkeeper announce that Princess Shuama had come to visit. With cold eyes fixed on Shuama as she entered the main hall, Xiao Nanye's expression showed no warmth. Shuama, on the other hand, did not seem to notice the coldness in the man's eyes. She walked forward with a smile. "Your Highness, one hope you'll forgive my sudden visit. Princess Shuama came to my Cheng mansion late at night. Is there something you need?" "Indeed, I have a request. Being new to the capital, I'm not very familiar with it. I was hoping that you might be willing to show me around." Hearing this, Han Feng, standing next to Xiao Nanye, widened his eyes. If the situation had been different, he would have applauded this princess from the grasslands for her audacity. "You should find someone else. I'm not available," Xiao Nanye declined flatly. "Your Highness, Han Feng, see our guest out." Zhuama hadn't expected Xiao Nanye to refuse her so bluntly. As she stood up from her chair, preparing to say something else, he cut her off. She tried to approach him, but Han Feng blocked her way. "Princess Zhuama, please." She shot Han Feng a fierce look before leaving the mansion. However, instead of departing right away, she had her carriage brought to the side. She had noticed earlier that Xiao Nanye was about to leave his mansion, and she wanted to find out where he was heading. "Master, Princess Zhuama hasn't left yet," Han Feng whispered, having noticed her lurking in the shadows. Xiao Nanye glanced coldly in her direction, murmuring, "Ignore her." He always disregarded things and people he deemed unimportant. Shortly after, Xiao Nanye and Han Feng mounted their horses. Seeing this, Zhuama rode over. "Your Highness, where are you headed? May I accompany you?" Han Feng was speechless. He couldn't believe someone, especially a princess, could be so shameless. Without sparing her a glance, Xiao Nanye signaled to his horse, which immediately bolted forward. Han Feng quickly followed. Zhuama clenched her teeth, raising her own whip to spur her horse on. But by the time she rounded the corner, following the sound of hooves, Xiao Nanye and Han Feng had disappeared from sight. Staring at the direction in which they'd vanished, Zhuama's grip tightened in frustration. Meanwhile, in the general's mansion, Plum Garden, the lights in Jiang Peihuan's room were out. Xiao Nanye stood in the courtyard, quietly approaching her door. He gently pushed it open. There was a faint fragrance in the air, and the man's eyes became gentle. In the darkness, the man slowly walked to the bedside. Chapter 225. It shouldn't sleep on the bed anymore at that moment. As Xiao Nanye approached the bed, Xiao Bai lying next to Jiang Peihuan opened its eyes. However, upon recognizing that the intruder was Xiao Nanye, it closed its eyes again. Jiang Peihuan, on the other hand, didn't wake up even when Xiao Nanye sat down by her bed. The darkness didn't hinder Xiao Nanye's vision. As he gazed at Jiang Peihuan on the bed, his eyes softened. Admiring Jiang Peihuan's beautiful face, he couldn't help but reach out and gently touch her cheek. That touch made Jiang Peihuan open her eyes. Seeing Xiao Nanye sitting beside her bed, she was somewhat dazed. Xiao Nanye, can you actually enter my dreams? When Jiang Peihuan opened her eyes, Xiao Nanye was startled, feeling like a child caught doing something mischievous. But her words left him dumbfounded. After a moment, he couldn't help but chuckle. Do you really think this is a dream? He reached out to her again. But this time, Jiang Peihuan grabbed his hand. Xiao Nanye? It took her a few seconds to realize that this wasn't a dream and that he had indeed sneaked into her room. Sitting up, Jiang Peihuan looked at the man beside her bed with disbelief. Meeting her gaze, Xiao Nanye felt a rare moment of awkwardness. Did I wake you up? I just wanted to see you. I won't disturb you. As he finished speaking, he prepared to leave, but Jiang Peihuan grabbed his sleeve. Facing his puzzled look, she whispered, "There's a snowstorm outside. Wait it out here." Han Feng, who was standing on the tree outside and facing the wind and snow, heard the conversation in the room. His eyes were filled with resentment. But soon, Han Feng stopped complaining because Jiang Peihuan's door was opened a crack. Then, a white figure was thrown out. Xiao Bai, who was tossed out, rolled a few times in the snow. Then, with wide eyes, it looked confusedly at Xiao Nanye at the door. "If you dare to sleep on the bed again, I'll skin you alive." After saying that, Xiao Nanye closed the door. Realizing it had been left outside, Xiao Bai rushed to the door, scratching it desperately. Han Feng, who was on the tree, saw this scene and quickly flew down to hold Xiao Bai in his arms. Seeing that Xiao Bai was tired to escape, Han Feng said in a soft voice, "I advise you not to disturb Master and Eldest Miss, otherwise, your wolf skin will really be peeled off." Perhaps understanding Han Feng's words or feeling too cold, Xiao Bai shivered. Smiling, Han Feng tucked Xiao Bai into his cloak. Seeing Xiao Bai trying to escape, Han Feng said with a smile, "Just stay inside my cloak. While it's not as warm as the Eldest Miss bed, it's still warm. Moreover, I'm quite bored up in this tree alone. Keep me company." Afterward, a man and a wolf silently crouched in the tree, watching the door to Jiang Peihuan's room. Inside the room, Jiang Peihuan, now on her bed, looked at the closed door and was speechless. Looking at the man sitting by her bed, she couldn't help but ask, "Why on earth did you throw Xiao Bai out? It shouldn't sleep on the bed anymore." Why? Having Xiao Bai's warmth, Jiang Peihuan always felt cozier in bed. Because it shouldn't. Facing Jiang Peihuan's puzzled look, the man cleared his throat and continued, "If it gets into the habit, it'll probably always want to sleep on the bed. Are you suggesting that after our wedding, one should make room for it?" His voice filled with lament. Xiao Nanye's eyes showed a hint of jealousy. He wouldn't admit it, but he was jealous. He hadn't even laid down on Jiang Peihuan's bed yet. Why should a wolf like Xiao Bai get to? Jiang Peihuan always felt there was something off about Xiao Nanye's words, but she couldn't pinpoint the issue immediately. She didn't want to dwell on the topic of whether to sleep or not with Xiao Nanye, so she brought up the matter of the gifts bestowed upon her by Emperor Qi Ming. Looking at the man by her bedside, Jiang Peihuan softly said, "I asked Chief Eunuch Wang, and he mentioned it was due to you. What did you do to make the emperor grant me these gifts?" Hearing this, Xiao Nanye raised an eyebrow. Smiling gently at Jiang Peihuan, he replied, "Since the emperor has given you a gift, just accept it. I didn't do much. One just sent him a cloak from the storeroom." Jiang Peihuan was speechless. Whether it was in her past life or this one, she had always heard of Emperor Qi Ming's extreme fondness for his only brother, Xiao Nanye. She hadn't believed it before, but now she truly did. After chatting a bit more, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but yawn continuously. Seeing her continuous yawning, Xiao Nanye stood up, then said to Jiang Peihuan, "You should rest. I'll be leaving now." Truly feeling drowsy, Jiang Peihuan nodded in agreement. Watching Jiang Peihuan lie down, Xiao Nanya carefully draped the blanket over her and then quietly exited the room. Just as Xiao Nanya stepped out, Han Feng, holding Xiao Bai, descended from the tree. "Master, are we leaving now?" Han Feng asked, worried he might freeze to death on that tree if they lingered any longer. "Yes, let's go." Seeing Xiao Nanya's nod, Han Feng's eyes lit up with joy, and he quickly followed. As they reached the wall, it seemed Han Feng remembered something. He took Xiao Bai out from his cloak and placed it on the ground. Xiao Nanya gave it a glance before departing with Han Feng. Xiao Bai, left behind, immediately ran to Jiang Peihuan's door. It carefully pushed the door open with its paws and dashed in. In her drowsy state, Jiang Peihuan faintly heard some movement. Opening her eyes, she saw Xiao Bai lying beside her. Remembering what that man had said, Jiang Peihuan looked at Xiao Bai with a full smile. "Xiao Bai, go to sleep." She stroked its head, then closed her eyes. Outside the general manor, Zhuo Ma sat in a carriage. Even though there had been a coal fire in the carriage, it had long since died out, making her feel so cold her hands were stiffening. Just as she was considering whether to leave or not, she heard her maid's excited voice, "Princess, King Cheng has come out." Hearing the announcement, Zhuo Ma immediately lifted the curtain and, upon seeing Xiao Nanya on horseback, her eyes filled with excitement. Turning her gaze, Zhuo Ma stared intently at the general's mansion. As for all these matters, Jiang Peihuan remained oblivious. Perhaps winter really was a season to sleep deeply, as she slept soundly until daylight. "Eldest miss, are you awake?" Chapter 226. I want to marry King Cheng Yu, who was outside the door, heard the commotion inside and called out in a soft voice. "I'm awake. Come in." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's voice, Yu opened the door and placed the hot water she was holding on a shelf. With a smile, she approached Jiang Peihuan. "Did eldest miss sleep well last night?" "Yes. Ever since this heavy snow began, I've been sleeping later and later each day." "That's good. You usually wake up early, eldest miss. Now, it's a perfect time for you to rest." Hearing Yu's words, Jiang Peihuan smiled without commenting. Just as she had finished freshening up, Lu burst into the room in a fluster. Seeing her in such a state, Yu frowned. "Lu, what's the matter?" Seeing the look in Yu's eyes, Lu paused before apologizing to Jiang Peihuan. "Miss, I'm sorry. What happened?" Without waiting for Lu to finish speaking, Jiang Peihuan interrupted her softly. She thought Lu would have learned from the previous incident, but in such a short span of time, Lu had reverted to her old ways. Jiang Peihuan felt a touch of helplessness. Realizing her lapse, Lu said urgently, "Princess Zhuo from the Grassland tribe has come, specifically asking to see you." "Princess Zhuo?" Seeing Lu nod, surprise filled Jiang Peihuan's eyes. In her past life, Princess Zhuo never visited the Qi kingdom. But in this life, many things seemed different from before. Lost in her thoughts, Jiang Peihuan suddenly heard fighting noises outside. With a frown, she headed out. Frowning, Jiang Peihuan walked out directly. In the courtyard, Zhuo Ma dodged a sword thrust from Yi Xiao. Her horsewhip lashed towards Yi Xiao's face. "You dare to stop me, wretch?" Jiang Peihuan, who had just stepped out, heard Zhuo Ma's words and her expression instantly turned icy. "Yi Xiao, stand down." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's voice, Yi Xiao immediately retreated to the side. However, at this moment, Zhuo Ma's eyes revealed a hint of gloominess. With a flip of her wrist, the horsewhip in her hand whipped Yi Xiao's back. Jiang Peihuan's eyes turned cold when she saw this. Reaching for her waist, Jiang Peihuan swung the long black whip in her hand. Her whip entangled Zhuo Ma's, yanking it from her grasp. Tossing Zhuo Ma's whip aside, Jiang Peihuan retracted her own, her gaze cold as ice. "Princess Zhuo Ma, is it appropriate for you to come to my courtyard and attack my people so early in the morning?" Zhuo Ma didn't respond immediately, instead sizing up Jiang Peihuan. The night before, Shed learned that Xiao Nanya was not yet married, but did have a fiancé, Jiang Peihuan. Zhua Ma assessed Jiang Peihuan's features, and a hint of jealousy crept into her eyes. I just wanted to speak with Miss Jiang. I didn't expect your servant to block my way. One lost my temper. Please forgive me. Seeing Zhuoma's sudden change in demeanor, Jiang Peihuan's brow furrowed. Zhua Ma awaited a reply, but when none came, she stepped forward. I'd like to explore the capital. Miss Jiang, I'm new to the Qi kingdom and don't know anyone here. Why don't you show me around? She added, by the way, the Emperor of Qi has agreed to this. Hearing Zhua Ma's words, Jiang Peihuan hesitated briefly before nodding, very well. An hour later, Jiang Peihuan and Zhua Ma walked to the entrance of the general's mansion together. Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to board the carriage, she was stopped by Zhua Ma. Meeting her puzzled gaze, Zhua Ma said with a meaningful smile, Miss Jiang, as you may know, I grew up on the grasslands. Women of the grasslands are accustomed to horse riding. I'm not used to sitting in this carriage. Why don't you ride with me? When she came, Zhua Ma had asked around. Most young ladies in the capital were delicate and frail. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, she seemed gentle and fragile. She didn't believe Jiang Peihuan could ride a horse in such cold weather. However, what unfolded before her eyes left Zhua Ma stunned. Well, as the princess wishes. Upon hearing Zhua Ma's words, Jiang Peihuan nodded and then whistled sharply with her fingers to her lips. Soon, the sound of galloping hooves approached. Lai Feng ran directly to Jiang Peihuan. Gently patting its head, she mounted the horse with ease. Seeing Jiang Peihuan's agile movements, Zhua Ma was stunned. This wasn't what she had anticipated. Not only was Jiang Peihuan skilled, but both Yi Xiao and Yu Er also displayed agility. Witnessing this, Zhua Ma couldn't hold back any longer. Weren't the women of the capital said to be frail? Then why are you? While many ladies in the capital may be delicate, my family hails from a military background. One grew up in a military camp. Therefore, for me, riding and archery are as common as daily meals. Hearing this, Zhua Ma shut her mouth, not wanting to utter another word. The group rode their horses towards the city. Upon reaching a street food stall at the city entrance, Jiang Peihuan stopped. Following her lead, Zhua Ma dismounted and, taking in the scene, her eyes showed a hint of curiosity. Still, she asked with some displeasure, Is this where you brought me? I'm hungry. I want to eat something first. Having said that, Jiang Peihuan sat down at a nearby dumpling stall. Turning to Zhua Ma, she softly inquired, Would the princess like some? Zhua Ma instinctively wanted to decline. However, as the stall owner lifted the lid off the pot, the aromatic scent reached her nostrils. Her initial refusal turned into, Since you're eating, I'll join you. Boss, 6 bowls of dumplings. Considering the 2 maids accompanying Princess Zhua Ma, Jiang Peihuan ordered 6 bowls in total. Both Zhua Ma and Jiang Peihuan sat at the same table. After finishing their meal, Zhua Ma felt a slight lift in her mood. But recalling her purpose for meeting Jiang Peihuan, her smile faded. As Jiang Peihuan was about to stand up, Zhua Ma spoke, Jiang Peihuan? Hearing Zhua Ma's voice, Jiang Peihuan turned to look at her. Jiang Peihuan, I want to marry King Cheng. Meeting Jiang Peihuan's gaze, Zhua Ma spoke directly. Hearing this, surprise flashed in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, but it quickly vanished. Chapter 227 I believe he won't marry you. Looking at Zhua Ma, Jiang Peihuan nodded, one understand. Zhua Ma had expected that after she spoke, Jiang Peihuan would fly into a rage. She had envisioned all possible outcomes, but she hadn't expected Jiang Peihuan to remain so calm. Seeing Jiang Peihuan get up, she couldn't help but rise as well. Staring at Jiang Peihuan, she asked coldly, Aren't you angry? Why should I be? Zhuo Ma stared intently into Jiang Peihuan's eyes, noticing that her expression was truly without a ripple of emotion. Zhuo Ma felt a flash of anger. Stop pretending. I know the Emperor of the Qi Kingdom has decreed your marriage to King Cheng. I want to marry him. I don't believe you aren't angry. Princess Zhuo Ma, as you said, you want to marry King Cheng. Thus, you should be speaking to him about this, not me. If you can get His Highness King Cheng to agree, I definitely won't stop you from marrying him. Of course, I believe that he won't marry you. Huan. As soon as Jiang Peihuan finished speaking, she heard a familiar voice. She turned around and saw Xiao Nanye sitting on the horse's back. Xiao Juanhao was beside him. Xiao Nanye got off his horse and walked to Jiang Peihuan's side. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nanye said directly, "Believe me, one have nothing to do with her." "When did you arrive?" "A while ago." Hearing his words, Jiang Peihuan's eyes sparkled. "So you heard everything I just said?" Xiao Nanye remained silent, simply nodding. When he heard Jiang Peihuan's indifferent words earlier, Xiao Nanye felt a bit panicked, but after hearing her final words, he was delighted. "Why did you leave the mansion?" "Princess Zhuo Ma wanted me to accompany her on a stroll, so I went out. And Imperial Brother asked me to inspect the situation of the guards in the capital." "King Cheng?" Zhuo Ma had been standing by the side. Seeing that Xiao Nanye was only talking to Jiang Peihuan, a trace of jealousy flashed in her eyes. She walked up to him. Looking at Zhuo Ma who was walking towards him, Xiao Nanye's eyes revealed a hint of annoyance. The gentleness in his eyes instantly disappeared. He looked at Zhuo Ma coldly, but he did not say anything. "Your Highness King Cheng, we just met last night at your mansion. Do you still remember?" Hearing Zhuo Ma's words, Xiao Nanye frowned and subconsciously looked at Jiang Peihuan. Seeing that she didn't look upset, he let out a sigh of relief. Without giving Zhuo Ma another glance, Xiao Nanye turned to Han Feng, "Order that aside from Huan, no other woman is allowed to step into my mansion." "Yes." When Han Feng heard his master's order, he hurriedly nodded in response. Zhuo Ma's expression turned ugly when she heard this. "Imperial uncle, Princess Zhuo Ma is a distinguished guest after all." "This seems a bit too cold-hearted of you." Xiao Juanhao, who had been silent all this while, glanced at Zhuo Ma and Jiang Peihuan, then laughed. Hearing his voice, a smile appeared on Zhuo Ma's face. Xiao Nanye sneered, "Since Prince Qing is so hospitable, you can take care of Princess Zhuo Ma. If you like her, you might as well take her into your mansion. After all, you've already chosen your main and side consorts, what's one more?" Hearing Xiao Nanye's words, Xiao Junhao's eyes darkened. When Jiang Yang became his main consort, his position as prince had already been denied by the emperor, mainly because of the rebellion of King Chujiang. If he were to marry a princess from a grassland tribe, his fate would be sealed. "Imperial uncle, you must be joking. Princess Zhuo Ma is obviously in love with you." "What a joke. Just because she's fond of me, does that mean I have to marry her? There are countless women in this world who are fond of me. Should I marry them all and let them eat freely at my mansion?" Hearing what Xiao Nanye said, Zhuo Ma's face was beyond the description of unpleasant. However, Xiao Nanye didn't even bother to look at the two. He turned to Jiang Peihuan and said, "Since we've left the mansion, why not let me accompany you for a stroll?" When speaking to Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nanye's expression was tender. Seeing Xiao Nanye's change in demeanor, Zhuo Ma clenched her fists in frustration. Xiao Junhao's face was also unpleasant to behold. From the beginning to end, Xiao Juanhao's gaze remained fixed on Jiang Peihuan, yet she never once looked back at him. Did he really become an irrelevant stranger in her eyes? Jiang Peihuan wasn't aware of Xiao Junhao's thoughts. Somehow, over time, her intense hatred for Xiao Juanhao had somewhat waned, replaced more by annoyance. Hearing Xiao Nanye, Jiang Peihuan whispered, "Don't you have official duties?" "No matter. No task is more important than you." After speaking, Xiao Nanye turned to Xiao Juanhao. "Prince Qing, this duty is yours now. Huan, let's go." Saying this, Xiao Nanye reached out and took Jiang Peihuan by the wrist. At that moment, Zhou Ma blocked their path. Despite seeing Xiao Nanye's ominous expression, she said softly, "King Cheng, I have received permission from the Emperor of Qi to have eldest Miss Jiang accompany me around the capital. Are you going against the Emperor's decree?" Temph. Hearing Zhou Ma's words, Xiao Nanye sneered and took Jiang Peihuan's hand and left. Zhou Ma wanted to follow, but Han Feng pulled out his sword and aimed it at Zhou Ma. "Princess, one advise you not to follow." While Han Feng spoke with a faint smile, his eyes bore no humor, only a stern warning. As he spoke, Xiao Nanye and Jiang Peihuan had already moved quite a distance away. The streets were covered in snow, but many people had set up their stalls. Since it was the capital, it was still bustling. However, as they walked, Jiang Peihuan noticed several beggars. Seeing them, she turned to Xiao Nanye and said, "There are so many beggars in the city now." Following her gaze, Xiao Nanye also saw the beggars, his eyes reflecting a moment of silence. The recent heavy snow has affected the surrounding farmers. This year has been colder than previous ones, so many can't survive. If it's like this in the capital, isn't it worse in the surrounding towns? Indeed it is. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan turned to him and said, "Does the emperor know about this? Has he taken any measures?" "The officials haven't reported the situation yet." As he said this, Xiao Nanye's eyes were filled with mockery. Seeing his expression, Jiang Peihuan's face also darkened. The emperor cannot leave the palace at will. If the ministers don't report, even if there are dead bodies everywhere outside the palace, the emperor will never know. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.